Start of a big travel weekend. Eurotunnel says delays at French border control points created 6-hour queues outside Dover. Lisa Minot is travel editor for The Sun.
Just as the airports seem to be finally getting a grip and calming down and people are being able to get away happily through airports, 900,000 are going to be heading off from UK airports this weekend. Now we have this critical incident at Dover where they've got huge queues.
And Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, battling Rishi Sunak to become the next UK Prime Minister, is demanding that French authorities limit any further disruption. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking in more detail today at the impact of the Italian government's collapse on the crisis in Ukraine, with Italians heading for fresh elections within the next 70 days, after Prime Minister Mario Draghi's resignation was accepted by Italy's president yesterday. It's clear that Rome's continued support of Ukraine's efforts to repulse the Russian invasion will be one of the central issues on the ballot. John Hooper is Italy correspondent for The Economist.
Italy has been among the most reticent of countries in terms of its support for Ukraine. That's not the case with Mr. Draghi. Mr. Draghi has been unequivocally, very much in the style of Boris Johnson, a supporter of Ukraine and a supporter of sending not just aid but arms to Ukraine.
The future of all that will be in doubt. Just last week, Italy's foreign minister accused Prime Minister Draghi's critics of doing Vladimir Putin's dirty work for him by opposing the continued existence of the coalition government in Rome. And one of the reasons why Prime Minister Draghi's resignation has caused such concern across Europe is due to the threat it may end up posing to Western unity in the face of Russia's aggression. The main news again. Steve Bannon, Donald Trump's political strategist, has been convicted of contempt of Congress and faces up to 2 years in jail. The United Nations says a deal to restore exports of grain from Ukraine will bring relief and help stabilize global food prices. And the company that operates the Channel Tunnel says delays at French border control points created 6-hour queues on Friday outside Dover. There's more from us on Twitter at Feature Story. And that is the latest Feature Story news. Simon Marks reporting.
It's the Onion Radio News. A spokeswoman gives birth to a spokeschild. This is Doyle Redland reporting. Tacoma spokeswoman Tammy Barker became the proud mother of a bouncing baby spokeschild last night. According to spokespeople, Barker, a spokeswoman for a Tacoma-based pharmaceutical firm, the birthing process was a major success. Peter Wahlberg, spokesman for Tammy's husband Phil, had this to say.
At 9:17 p.m. last night, an 8.5-month-old spokes fetus was delivered alive and through the miracle of birth became a 7-pound, 6-ounce spokes child. Spokes father and spokes mother are doing fine.
Spokeswoman Barker is expected to be released from St. Robert's Hospital tomorrow. The spokeschild will remain in the hospital's media care unit for several weeks of training. Doyle Redland for the Onion Radio News, online at theonion.com.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. You can bring up whatever you want to discuss. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And we got lots to talk about here tonight, including Binance, the world's largest, most popular, largest market cap, I guess, cryptocurrency exchange, is being targeted because they've done business with people, apparently, in Iran. And that's a no-no. So in the studio right now, it's Ian.
And Chris.
And nobody is in the building. I think he'll be joining us shortly. The number, again, 603-283-6160. We will also go right into your phone calls and thoughts. I think, is this Major Payne?
Yeah, but I didn't want to get on the air. I was just going to.
Well, don't call a talk show if you don't want to get on the air, Major. What's on your mind?
Well, there is a song that was released today only on Truth Social and has gone #1 on the country charts.
Really?
just from that. Yeah, the guy's name is John Rich. He does the opening music for Sean Hannity's show, but the name of the song is Progress.
Okay.
And the hook of the song is you can take your progress and put it where the sun don't shine. So I think
it's anti-progress.
Well, the fact that I want you to listen to the song during one of the breaks. You guys will get a hoot out of it.
Okay, well, I'm not on Truth Social, so how am I going to get it?
No, it's been, like I said, it went #1 on the viral. The only place it was played today on the radio was on Sean Hannity, so you can pull it off of that.
Oh, okay.
If nothing else. But anyway, just the fact that song, from only being released on one Twitter site, has gone viral and #1. You listen to the song, you'll understand that it tells exactly what the temperament of the people are right now.
Now, how does one determine whether a song has gone #1?
Check the country music charts. They got whatever's hitting viral right now is on top.
Well, I don't think they judge I mean, it's been a while since I've looked at Billboard, but I'm pretty sure Billboard doesn't look at internet plays as far as their ratings are concerned.
Well,
you're saying this is on. You're saying it's hitting on country music radio stations real big.
No, it was only the first time it was played was today, and I heard it.
Okay, because I'm going to say right now, I mean, at 6,400 views, I mean that's not a whole lot. I mean it's not terrible or anything, but I wouldn't call that viral. Maybe. Go ahead.
They're probably beating the numbers down if what I'm saying is correct.
Could be. So this person is against progress. Does that mean it's just an attack against the progressive movement?
No, it's like I said, you guys really need to hear the song. He talks about the gas prices, all the hoorah that's going on, how the people are being blinded by all the new Green Deal and every other thing.
Gotcha.
So it's a hell of a tune.
All right, man.
Like I said, punch it up during the break if you can.
All right, well, thank you, Major Payne. Appreciate it. The number here is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Country music, very, very popular format here in the United States. Doesn't do much for me, personally. I know, Chris, you're not much into music at all.
What's country music?
The #1 music format in the United States. That's what it is.
Is that real?
Yeah, as far as radio stations are concerned.
Interesting.
Yeah. It doesn't.
Who knew?
Yeah. The numbers again 603-283-6160. So we got the Binance Iran story to talk about, but more important than that, I think, at least at the moment, is the big poll that has been released. And I call it big not because it has a large sample size. It has enough. It's a scientifically, I think, succinct, appropriate poll. But not that it has a large sample size, but that it is the first of its kind.
I mean, it's certainly larger than a lot of studies out there.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
625 people were the sample size here in New Hampshire. And what makes it...
But the poll itself was much bigger than that, right?
Well, there were 625 people in New Hampshire, so that was the poll in New Hampshire. There were seven other states in which it was 625 people per state.
Okay.
That this was conducted. And so they looked at the southern states, basically east of Texas and to the east, so the whole strip of southern states all the way to Florida. And they looked at Hawaii and they looked at New Hampshire and asked people a series of questions about independence, about declaring independence from the United States, and under what circumstances people would be interested in that or not. And so the numbers we had talked earlier this week about Texas, because the numbers for 7 of the 8 states were actually out, I think, on Monday or Tuesday this week. So we already covered some of that. But the New Hampshire numbers hadn't come out until today or late last night. And I was able to get from Alu Axelman, who is the creator over at the Liberty Block, his website, libertyblock.com, access to the actual, the PDF, the actual numbers that came out from the survey company, which is called Survey USA. And it's been a busy day with me editing video from the court hearing the other day where they kicked people out of court because an CO2 sensor went off during the middle of the court hearing with a fairly low reading. But what happened was, I wasn't able to really dig through these numbers, but I do have them in front of me, so we're going to look at some of the interesting takeaways from this. One interesting number, of course, one of the most important questions is a 27-question survey, but some of them just kind of talk about, well, do you trust the federal government more than the state government? And, what would happen if Hawaii seceded? Would you want the military to intervene? So there's a bunch of interesting questions in here. But really the most important question has to be number 19, I think, which is, I would prefer New Hampshire to govern itself as an independent country. And that's a pretty straightforward question. That's the one that really want to see answered by people, because prior to this survey, a lot of the secession-related polls, number one, they haven't focused on New Hampshire. They just talked to people across the United States. Or in the best one that happened prior to this was last year, where they talked to people in different regions, and they asked people in different regions if they wanted to see their state secede and join a regional sort of federation. So there would be like the New England country, and then there'd be the Southeast country, and then there'd be the Western country. And I mean, it would still be better than being under the United States. But, but that number got
probably fewer wars overseas, right?
Yeah, that number got about 34% in New England, and the Republicans, I think, on that one were like 26%, and it was actually the Democrats who voted higher than the Republicans on that one, which was interesting. But again, that was about getting the New England states to secede and join their own union. So we never had seen anything focusing just on New Hampshire until now. So here are the results from the survey. Again, surveyusa.com. The number of people in New Hampshire who right now in 2022, this was taken in late June, who either strongly or somewhat agree with the statement that New Hampshire, I would prefer New Hampshire govern itself as an independent country, is 29%. So it's actually 14% strongly agree and 15%
now that was
somewhat.
The overall number, correct?
Of people in New Hampshire who said, I would prefer New Hampshire to govern itself as an independent country.
That's not bad.
It's actually pretty good. It's not quite 1 out of 3, but close.
I mean, considering that NH exit is just barely on anybody's radar at this point.
Correct. Well, but that's not to say that the idea of independence hasn't been on people's radar, or that the thought of national divorce has. I mean, that's been getting talked about for the last year or so.
I'm just thinking more compared to maybe Texas, which it's been in the news for decades, as opposed to New Hampshire, a decade? I mean, half a decade ago, NH exit was sort of...
about 10 years ago, but I mean, they've never had any prominence.
Right. It's been a couple of small protests with 5 or 6 people, and that's about it. Whereas, it got more substantial much more recently in the past year, but up until, this year, who in the public has really heard about it?
So in addition to the 29% who either strongly or somewhat agree with those statements, there's another 14% that said they weren't sure. So that's still, altogether, it's still not half. It certainly isn't enough to, to pass a 2/3 required constitutional amendment.
Sure.
But it is a good starting point to say roughly 1 out of 3 people that live in New Hampshire today are already ready to be an independent country. So that is... I would rather start there than start at 10%.
Oh, yeah.
Start at 5%. So we're talking about 29% here. We got more coming up. The number, if you want to join us, 603-283-6160. You can bring up whatever you want. And there's some interesting, like when you start breaking down the demographics on this as well, it gets even more interesting. We'll share that with you coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with AgristHosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to AgristHosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's AgristHosting.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's Antiwar.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live, and you can join us here. You can bring up whatever you want. The number is 603-283-6160. We're celebrating what I consider to be good news, and you didn't say this on the air yet, Chris, but you said you were disappointed off the air last night when the numbers came out from this poll. And I want to talk about that, like, you know, why you thought they were disappointing, and we'll get into it coming up here in just a moment. But we're talking about some very important poll numbers because they're the first to come out of here, New Hampshire, looking at a scientific poll with 625 respondents about various questions related to New Hampshire independence and independence from the federal government in general, independence for other states like Texas and Hawaii and California. There were actually 8 states that were studied. 625 respondents in each of the states. I have not looked at any of the other states except for Texas, so I don't know what the rest of them look like. But if you want to join the show, you can. 603-283-6160. And Free Talk Live is, of course, brought to you by Bitcoin.com. If you're ready to start learning about cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, you can head over and click Get Started at the top of the page. And then that will send you over to some introductory videos and such where you can learn about the basics about cryptocurrency. You don't want to jump into crypto without understanding at least some basic concepts about decentralization of money and what it is that makes cryptocurrency special. So take the time, click Get Started at the top of the page. Just go to Bitcoin.com And if you want to get the latest news headlines, they've got those as well. Just visit news.bitcoin.com to do that. Let's go to your phone calls and thoughts. Gigi is on the line in South Carolina. Go ahead, Gigi.
Good evening, everyone. I'm calling because several nights ago, the hosts on the show that I absolutely love listening to, as well as all the callers from around the nation, you guys had an awesome, educational, academically stimulating, wonderful program where the captain was reviewing and explaining and outlining for all of us listeners across the nation about Milton Friedman's 12 points of economic theory. I loved it.
Oh, cool.
It was one of the best shows.
Oh, great. I'm really glad to hear that. I wasn't here for that one, so I didn't get to hear it.
Well, permit me this moment.
For listeners that want to know, that was Saturday night's show if they missed it. So they can go back to freetalklive.com and grab it there.
I've been in academics for many years in 3 different states, as well as specializing in appellate law. And I always loved and still do being a professor. I told many of my colleagues in the economics department, of which I am not, how wonderful the program was and how much I learned. And I'm just calling to compliment that show. It was wonderful.
All right, Gigi. Well, thank you for the kind words. Appreciate it. And as I said, folks that want to hear that can go and grab it anytime. Just go to freetalklive.com. You'll find the podcast, I don't know what you call it, player, a little widget on the site. Or if you can't find it, just go use the top menu and go to the archive section. You'll find it there, and then you can just scroll back to Saturday and download. Gigi says it was great. I unfortunately wasn't here for it, so I didn't get to hear the show, but I'm glad she liked it. Thank you, Gigi. So, Chris, the numbers here are, I think, encouraging. I was really happy that 29% of the people of New Hampshire right now are already saying they would prefer New Hampshire to govern itself as an independent country. And you said that was lower than you were expecting.
No. Not so much lower than I was expecting. More, I was hopeful. Is the best way to phrase it. And I was hopeful because of numbers that I was seeing elsewhere and the people I was talking to on the street and what I was hearing from other people. It wasn't scientific polls. And so, I didn't know, right? We were, but it got my hopes up. My hopes were, I didn't expect it to be 70 to 78%, something like that.
Because you're referring to a internet poll that the union leader did. What was it, last year, I think, at some point?
Yep.
It was after the whole CACR 32, the bill that had been put forward to put a constitutional amendment out there to allow the people of New Hampshire to vote. After that had sort of started working its way through the system, the union leader put a poll out, and it got over 70% of people.
And don't get me wrong, I figured that poll, the 78% especially, was, libertarians voting it up, right?
Must have been.
I figured that much. Yeah. But I was hoping we'd have a number that was maybe, I would have been ecstatic if we had gotten to 50+%. And
well, I mean, obviously, that would have been incredible.
And so in some sense, I was a little disappointed, but that's because my expectations were too high.
If it had gone that high, I would have been dubious of the results of the poll, honestly, because
you're right.
Would have been
you're right. I think you're right. But the poll did come out with some very interesting numbers that I think are beneficial. That I think we're going to get into.
Yeah, we're
here.
Definitely.
But I don't want to jump into it before you get further in. But
so just looking at this one question of I would prefer New Hampshire to govern itself as an independent country. There's a bunch of breakdowns as far as demographics are concerned. They looked at gender, they looked at age, they looked at race. Which I don't think they got many people of other races because New Hampshire doesn't have a lot. They looked at ideology, they looked at party affiliation, voting habits, education, whether they own a home, and their urbanicity. And there's some really interesting takeaways here. The first one to look at is, of course, the one that makes the number bigger, which is the number of Republicans who agreed, either somewhat or strongly, agreed with the statement they would prefer New Hampshire to govern itself as an independent country. With Republicans, it's 52%.
And that's the number that made me smile, because 52% means that there is actually support in the Republican Party for amongst its supporters anyway.
Yes.
For independence. Now, the question is, will that convince the Republicans on the fence, your representatives,
right,
to switch from being against independence or being not having a position on it to supporting it,
or to quietly being in favor of it but not wanting to say anything publicly because they were afraid that they might lose their reelection.
Right.
Which was I don't know how many of them there were, but I bet you there's a few dozen of them at least.
And if I'm not mistaken, there are, there's another interesting question that I don't think the poll got into, was the majority of people in New Hampshire are independent. So the question is
the plurality.
Yeah, plurality.
So there's more people who are what they call undeclared voters. So in New Hampshire, Libertarian Party's not on like an official party. So there's only the Republicans, the Democrats, and then there's a different category of undeclared. They are the plurality, meaning there are more undeclared voters than there are Republican voters, and there are more undeclared voters than there are Democrat voters, but there's not more than both Republicans and Democrats combined.
What makes me that makes me kind of wonder how did the poll, they broke it down between Republican and Democrat, but not...
And independent. And the independent numbers are kind of weak.
Interesting.
So here's the independent numbers. So strongly and somewhat agree, you got 13 and 11%, so that's 24% of independents think it's a good idea to govern itself as an independent country. Democrats are the lowest, of course, with 7 saying strongly agree and 12% somewhat agree, so 19%. So independents more likely to support than Democrats, but nowhere near as likely as the Republicans here in New Hampshire. But again, this is just getting started, and I think it was Alu who pointed out in his article, maybe it was the Foundation.
He makes a very good point about all this.
That things can change.
And they'll change quick, too.
And they can change quickly. We'll get into all that coming up here, and you can share your thoughts on independence or whatever's on your mind. It's Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live's video archives have been on LBRY for years. LBRY is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, LBRY launched Odysee, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off, now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. Thankfully, Odysee started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odysee. You can watch live or anytime on our Odysee channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odysee today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Steve Bannon, Donald Trump's political strategist, has been convicted of contempt of Congress at a criminal trial in Washington. Jury deliberations took less than 3 hours, and Mr. Bannon now faces the possibility of thousands of dollars in fines and up to 2 years in jail. He was prosecuted on 2 counts of refusing to cooperate with the House Select Committee that's investigating last year's riot on Capitol Hill by Donald Trump's supporters. With the details, NBC News Radio's Pete Williams.
1 for refusing to testify before the January 6th committee, and a 2nd count for refusing to provide documents to the January 6th committee. The statute here is not very often used. It's been more than half a century since anybody was ever ordered to go to serve any time in jail for contempt of Congress.
And Mr. Bannon will be sentenced on October the 21st. The United Nations says a deal to restore exports of grain from Ukraine will bring relief and help stabilize global food prices. The agreement was signed in Turkey between Russia and Ukraine on Friday. From FSN's bureau at UN headquarters in New York, Sarah Walton reports.
At the signing ceremony in Istanbul, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said the deal to restart shipments of grain from Ukraine will bring relief for the most vulnerable people on the edge of famine. It took 3 months of negotiations, facilitated by the UN and Turkish officials, for Moscow and Kiev to agree to the deal that will see Ukrainian captains navigate ships from 3 Black Sea ports to Turkey, where they'll be unloaded and the grain shipped on. Vessels returning to Ukraine will then be inspected by a joint team of Turkish, UN, Ukrainian and Russian officials to confirm they're not carrying weapons. The operation is expected to begin in the coming weeks, shipping 5 million tons of grain a month. Sarah Walton, New York.
We've had an update today on President Joe Biden's health. The White House says he is responding well to treatment for COVID-19 and has again been working while in isolation in the White House residence. He had a slightly elevated temperature last night, but his vital signs are now said to be normal and he continues to be treated with the antiviral Paxlovid. The company that operates the Channel Tunnel says it's rejecting a French explanation for delays that paralysed the British port of Dover at the start of a big travel weekend. Eurotunnel says delays at French border control points created 6-hour queues outside Dover. Lisa Minot is travel editor for The Sun.
Just as the airports seem to be finally getting a grip and calming down and people are being able to get away happily through airports, 900,000 are going to be heading off from UK airports this weekend. Now we have this critical incident at Dover where they've got huge queues.
And Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, battling Rishi Sunak to become the next UK Prime Minister, is demanding that French authorities limit any further disruption. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join us here. The number, 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian.
And Chris.
Turns out nobody is not feeling well. He was in the house. He just got back from a restaurant, and I guess it didn't agree with him real good. So he's passed out in the next room right now. Maybe we'll see him later. Maybe we won't. But we got plenty to talk about here tonight, Chris. You and I have been discussing the big news out of New Hampshire, which is, and also not just New Hampshire, but 8 states had a survey done, and it's a company called Survey USA that did this, and purportedly they're renowned to some extent as far as surveys are concerned. And it is a scientific survey with 625 respondents where they looked at various different questions, about 27 questions in regards to independence for not just New Hampshire, but again, like I said, 7 other states, including Texas, Hawaii, and basically every southern state east of Texas. All of them were surveyed about independence. It was actually all conducted by the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence. They were the ones that were behind the survey. And we're sharing some of the interesting results out of this, namely that 52% of Republicans in New Hampshire either strongly or somewhat agree that New Hampshire should govern itself as an independent country. And as you pointed out, Chris, this is going to make this particular election season very interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Because already you've got the drama of the Republicans versus the Democrats. And just to be clear, we're not Republican Democrat people on this show. If you're new to Free Talk Live,
definitely not.
We're voluntarists, we're liberty-loving anarchists, we're libertarians. These are the kinds of folks you're going to find behind microphones at this show. But that said, earlier this year, the very first ever, very historic bill that was put forward, it didn't get through the process, but it was put forward. There was a public hearing on the bill, and then there was a vote on that bill on the State House floor. And the bill would have, if it had been passed by the State House and the State Senate with over 60% voting for it, it would have then gone to the ballot, and it would have been a ballot question for the people of New Hampshire to decide. Not to decide whether to start talking about seceding from the United States, but to actually declare independence peacefully from the United States. That's all it would have taken. Would have been 2/3 of the voters to vote on that. Unfortunately, it's not going on the ballot because it didn't even get through the State House.
It was still a historic vote.
It was.
I don't think any other state has had, since at least the Civil War, probably a hearing, let alone a vote by representatives, especially a whole house, on independence.
Correct. So very historic, and it got some press. It got some news. The Democrats right now are flipping out this
are they
election
ever?
season. They're using secession to try to position their candidates as, the good patriotic Democrats, and vote for them. But what happened during this was there were a lot of Republican state reps who, just to be clear, the 13 reps that did indicate that they had some level of support for the bill were all Republicans. And they got a raft of crap from some of the rest of the more statist Republicans that are in the state house. And then there's a bunch of other Republicans who quietly support secession but aren't willing to come out and promote that fact because they're worried that it would hurt them at the ballot box in November. So the question...
I think the number one response from reps for not voting was they didn't know what their constituents wanted them to, or how they wanted them to vote. So
correct. And in this case, this hopefully will give them a little bit more courage, because whether we like it or not, politicians are not known for having a backbone. Even though some of these people are friendly to us, some of them are libertarians. Some of them are, even though they're in office as Republicans, they are actually libertarians that ran as Republicans just so they could get elected. But even some of them wouldn't support this thing. Even some of them were afraid that they may not get reelected.
Yeah, I mean, and that is a question of, is it more worthwhile to remain in office or stay principled? I don't know if it's not principled, but certainly go towards your principles.
Can you stay principled and remain in office?
And I think
Ron Paul showed that you can.
I think the evidence in the polling suggests you can too.
Well, now they could probably still say that based on the fact that it's only the Republicans who are saying more than 50%. Again, 52% here either agree strongly or somewhat agreed that New Hampshire should govern itself as an independent country. That's still not enough to win an election. It might be enough to win a Republican primary, but it is not enough because the independents, you only had 24% of independents saying the same thing, and Democrats only 19% of them said the same thing. So they could still argue, well, even if I come out in favor of independents, I might get through the Republican primary and beat the primary opponent, but it won't help me at the general election. So I think you're still going to see that level of cowardice from some people. But this should move some of them in the right direction. This should at least, and hopefully there's a new what they call political action committee, a PAC here in New Hampshire. It's the New Hampshire Independence PAC. So it's not related, directly to the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence, but everybody's friendly. We know who everybody is, and so they hopefully will be contacting these candidates and letting them know the good news about this poll and its results, and then asking them to go on the record as to whether or not they support independence, and make this a key issue of this election. And let's get these people on the record and see, first of all, how many secession supporting candidates make it through the primary. First of all, are the people who voted this year going to make it through their primaries, because some of them have primaries. So that's an important question, is can this, the more establishment candidates that are now running against the secessionist candidates, are they going to, who's going to win in that circumstance? That's an important question. And secondly, how many other candidates who previously had not supported secession, or challengers that we've never heard of before, are willing to support secession to get the support of the one issue secessionist voters out there? So that's what that remains to be seen, but it will be interesting.
Yeah, it's also interesting in that people have never had that real opportunity to consider this or think about this issue, and that would have been the majority of the people who were asked this question too. So
yes, that's right. First time. It's probably the first time they've heard a question like that.
Right, exactly. It's the first time they've ever heard anybody even ask the question. So it really begs the question of, well, if they've never even had the opportunity to think about it, they're probably more likely to say no, they don't support it, or that they're unsure, because they just haven't had the time to think about it. Like it hasn't been an option in their mind. So I wonder how, as we campaign for independence further, right? And the news,
because this ain't stopping. It's just going to grow from here
as the idea gets out there more. What is what are people going to think then? Like if this same poll was done, say in 2 years,
and it
or
should
4
be.
years, or 6 years,
they're talking about doing it every couple of years at least, if not every year.
Right. Will this change? And I got a feeling it probably will. It will probably change for the better, and we'll end up with more people supporting independence.
Well, there's more than one reason why that's going to be true, I think.
Yeah.
One, we're going to persuade people over time.
Right.
They're gonna talk to a friend who's going to hear from.
Speaking of which, I even had somebody come up to me today. I was wearing my NHA shirt and asked me about independence
on the street.
Yeah, and they asked me, is this something about secession? I believe it was, and I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And I forgot what else exactly they asked, but it was. They
didn't tell you to go screw off or anything. They were nice about it.
Nope. He was genuinely interested in the idea. I got the feeling that he probably hadn't ever thought about it before.
Right. So that's important.
He sounded like he might like the idea. Like I mean, he was asking because it sounded like he liked the idea.
Right. People have to have their objections answered. Because they're going to have objections, they're going to have fears, and that's one of the important parts about this survey, which we haven't gotten to. One of the other questions is, if Hawaii or California or Texas were to secede, what should the federal government do about that?
And can it be done? I think that was his biggest question. Can it be done?
Well, we'll get into that too, and there's really a lot more to say. We got to talk about why the numbers are going to change, and I'll tell you one reason why. Old people don't like secession. I got demographics here. More coming up. This is Free Talk Live.
Should you be a one-car family? I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. My 15-year-old Ford Escape was literally held together by duct tape and Gorilla Glue, but the dealer who sold me my new car gave me $1,500 for it. When supply chain issues slammed the brakes on new cars and car parts, dealers' new and used inventory dried up, and lots of us who were sent home during the pandemic shutdown continue working there, and lunching at home is a whole lot cheaper than ordering takeout at the office. Given your new normal, and with dealers begging to buy used cars, should you sell one if it's mostly just sitting there? How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Phones are open and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ian and Chris in the studio tonight. We're talking about independence for, well, anybody who wants it. I mean, you should be able to be independent if you're an individual. You should be able to declare your own independence from all of the states of the world and live free. Unfortunately, that's not the world we live in because they will crush you and be violent and throw you in a jail cell if you don't do what they say. So unfortunately, that means that we have to do some level of organizing and political action and such. And that is what has been happening here in New Hampshire for the last almost 2 decades since the founding of the Free State Project, where libertarian activists have been migrating here to New Hampshire and getting active in various different ways. And one of those ways has been to talk about secession. The Foundation for New Hampshire Independence has been around since, I think, 2012. So I think they celebrated quietly their 10-year anniversary this year. And now they're rolling out some pretty big guns at this point. They're rolling out a poll that was done in late June. Numbers just came out within the last 24 hours. And I've got the details here, the crosstabs, as they call them. And we're just kind of digging through it here and just opining about what it means. These are important numbers because, to me, it's a really good starting point to say that 29% of all respondents in this scientific survey conducted by SurveyUSA.com are saying that they are already, or they, quote, would prefer New Hampshire to govern itself as an independent country. To me, that means they support secession today. And by the way, it's 14% we're not sure. So that's a large number of people that are already on the fence that we can work to persuade to our side. And we were just talking, Chris, you and I, about what are some of the factors that are going to come into play as far as why these numbers are going to shift over time in the directions of independence. First of all, the federal government is just going to get worse. I mean, we can count on that.
Oh, yeah.
You know that's going to... It doesn't matter if Trump gets elected again. I know a lot of people believe he's going to somehow make things better, but he didn't make things better the first 4 years. He's not going to make things better the second 4. Certainly another 4 of Joe Biden or Kamala Harris is just going to be... It's going to be worse, stacked on top of worse. Inflation's probably not going to slow down. And they're just going to make our case for us.
Yeah, it's so funny. Literally, Trump put in a 25% tariff. Most people don't know this. And then he lifted it before he left office. And then what did Joe Biden do? He reinstituted the 25% tariff.
Wow.
You know, these parties, these people, whether you're talking about people on the left or you're talking about people on the right, they are one and the same. You
can't tell the difference.
You really can't.
So beyond the federal government just doing our job for us and pushing people away from the idea of being part of their union anymore, it's also time is on our side. According to the numbers here in this survey, they did demographic breakdowns. And guess what? If you're over the age of 65, you're much less likely than everyone else to be against the idea. Or sorry, you're much less likely to be in favor of secession. So people who are 65 and over, only 5% of them strongly agreed with the statement, I would prefer New Hampshire govern itself as an independent country.
That's because they're all on Social Security and welfare. I mean,
well, that could be, but Social Security would still come through, so that's not it.
But they don't realize that. I think most people don't understand that. And I wonder how many you could get on our side if they understood that they would not be losing their Social Security.
That could be a factor, but regardless, their time is running out.
It is.
And when you start raising the age, you go to up to, and again, I'm just talking about strongly agree, that category.
Sure.
50 to 64, 13%, so you go from 5 to 13%. 35 people who are 35 to 49, it goes up to 20%, and then 18 to 34 dips down a little bit to 18%. So they actually cut it to they broke it down also into the category of 50 plus and 18 to 49. So people who are 50 plus, it's 9% strongly agree with New Hampshire governing itself as an independent country. And if you're under the age of 50, it's 19%. So it's more than twice as many people supporting strongly under the age of 50 than over the age of 50. So we definitely have an advantage when it comes to younger people supporting the ideas of independence. And especially Republicans, as we pointed out earlier, 52% of people who are affiliated with the Republican Party are supporting New Hampshire independence. So that's a pretty impressive statistic, and again, a very good starting point. Moving a little bit further down the line on this question, another interesting but not surprising detail is people who've completed 4 years of college also are not so interested in independence. So the more time you spent in the state-run indoctrination camps, the more you are supportive of the federal government gang, with only 8% of those who've completed 4 years in college saying they strongly agree with New Hampshire being an independent country.
Wait a minute. You got to give me that statistic. Only 4% support independence?
No. 8% of people who have 4-year college.
Yeah.
So bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
Only 8% strongly agree with the idea of New Hampshire being an independent country, compared to 21% of high school graduates.
Huh. Interesting.
And 13% of some college. So the more quote-unquote educated you are, the more you support the tyrannical police state.
Interesting.
Also, they broke down. This one was counter to what I expected. Looking at urbanicity, people who live in either urban or rural or suburban areas. They broke it down into those categories as well.
Yeah.
And again, we're just looking at the strongly agree category. Surprising. 11% of people in rural areas strongly agree with New Hampshire being an independent country. But 26% of urban people.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
I would have expected it to be the opposite of that.
Wouldn't you? Yeah, so would I. It was really kind of a surprise. Now, when you get into the somewhat agree category,
yep,
then it kind of changes a little bit. It goes to 11% urban, somewhat agree, to 15% rural, somewhat agree. But still, it was kind of a surprise to see more than double the percentage of the people really feel strongly about this.
Yeah, it seems so weird. You would think I'm shocked. I mean, I guess I would think people like living on farms would better understand how oppressive, the federal government is.
But maybe the farm people are more like, yeah, America. I don't know.
Wait, you know what it might be? They get subsidies. I bet you that's a good part of it, federal subsidies.
So do people in cities. I don't know. It's an interesting number. And actually, when you go on the reverse side of it, so the people that strongly disagree, the people that are the most vehement about staying within the union, the numbers hold true there to some extent as well, with 36% of rural saying stay in the union and 28% of urban. So again, more rural people wanting to identify with the federal government. And actually, suburban people even stronger than the rurals there, with 41% saying...
You know what?
Stay with the union.
American flag. It's so rooted in probably the culture.
Of the rural.
Yeah.
People?
I mean, think about it. I mean, they tend to be the types that hold the American flag. All constantly God, country, all that. And yeah, American flag.
So it's interesting. That's just one question that we were looking at here. Another one that I mentioned earlier was the big objection that you come to when you talk to people about independence. And it's their first time considering it. Usually there's a couple of objections that come out. One of them you've already touched on here. Well, what about Social Security? That's a big one that you hear a lot. Another one is, well, the government's just going to roll in tanks. The U.S. military will be called in. They're going to come into wherever it is we're talking about, and they're going to kill people.
Is it legal, and can you even do it? I think to kind of the ways people often phrase it.
I don't think that really matters to the federal government, right? Like if it comes to using violence against people to keep the union together, we know they did it once in the Civil War, and they would do it again.
There is an interesting statistic from the poll, though, in regards to support.
That's what I was about to get to here. So they asked this question: what is the strongest penalty that Congress should impose on the state if someday one of the following states were to vote to declare its intention to negotiate peacefully with Congress to separate from the U.S., which they shouldn't do. They should just say goodbye. Also, no longer send its elected officials to Congress, and finally, sign treaties to allow the United States to maintain important military bases within the state. So what would happen if California or Texas or Hawaii did that. So they asked 3 separate questions, all with the same sort of surrounding details. So if if California were to do those things that they proposed, only 3% of respondents in New Hampshire said that the military should be used to stop it. Only 3%.
Wow. I mean, basically, that's saying to me that, if we did declare independence, nobody would stop us.
Yeah, in fact, if you look at the other studies, so again, they looked at 7 states. We're just sharing the numbers from New Hampshire here. They looked at the southern states, southeastern states, and they looked at Hawaii. And you look at all their numbers according to, I think it was the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence that actually did take a look at that. And I don't think a single one of them went above 10% on that question. Many of them were 5, 6,
It would be
4%.
a very, very unpopular war, just as we suspected.
I'll see if I can find more about that here. But yeah, so people in the United States do not want to see an invasion of anyone who secedes. Some supported the idea of economic sanctions against those states. The vast majority just said, let them go. Hour number 2 is coming up. Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you're helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Steve Bannon, Donald Trump's political strategist, has been convicted of contempt of Congress at a criminal trial in Washington. Jury deliberations took less than 3 hours, and Mr. Bannon now faces the possibility of thousands of dollars in fines and up to 2 years in jail. He was prosecuted on 2 counts of refusing to cooperate with the House Select Committee that's investigating last year's riot on Capitol Hill by Donald Trump's supporters. With the details, NBC News Radio's Pete Williams.
1 for refusing to testify before the January 6th committee, and a 2nd count for refusing to provide documents to the January 6th committee. The statute here is not very often used. It's been more than half a century since anybody was ever ordered to go to serve any time in jail for contempt of Congress.
And Mr. Bannon will be sentenced on October the 21st. The United Nations says a deal to restore exports of grain from Ukraine will bring relief and help stabilize global food prices. The agreement was signed in Turkey between Russia and Ukraine on Friday. From FSN's bureau at UN headquarters in New York, Sarah Walton reports.
At the signing ceremony in Istanbul, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the deal to restart shipments of grain from Ukraine will bring relief relief for the most vulnerable people on the edge of famine. It took 3 months of negotiations, facilitated by the UN and Turkish officials, for Moscow and Kiev to agree to the deal that will see Ukrainian captains navigate ships from 3 Black Sea ports to Turkey, where they'll be unloaded and the grain shipped on. Vessels returning to Ukraine will then be inspected by a joint team of Turkish, UN, Ukrainian and Russian officials to confirm they're not carrying weapons. The operation's expected to begin in the coming weeks, shipping 5 million tonnes of grain a month. Sarah Walton, New York.
We've had an update today on President Joe Biden's health. The White House says he is responding well to treatment for COVID-19 and has again been working while in isolation in the White House residence. He had a slightly elevated temperature last night, but his vital signs are now said to be normal and he continues to be treated with the antiviral Paxlovid. The company that operates the Channel Tunnel says it's rejecting a French explanation for delays that paralysed the British port of Dover at the start of a big travel weekend. Eurotunnel says delays at French border control points created 6-hour queues outside Dover. Lisa Minot is travel editor for The Sun.
Just as the airports seem to be finally getting a grip and calming down and people are being able to get away happily through airports, 900,000 are going to be heading off from UK airports this weekend. Now we have this critical incident at Dover where they've got huge queues.
And Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, battling Rishi Sunak to become the next UK Prime Minister, is demanding that French authorities limit any further disruption. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking in more detail today at the impact of the Italian government's collapse on the crisis in Ukraine, with Italians heading for fresh elections within the next 70 days, after Prime Minister Mario Draghi's resignation was accepted by Italy's president yesterday. It's clear that Rome's continued support of Ukraine's efforts to repulse the Russian invasion will be one of the central issues on the ballot. John Hooper is Italy correspondent for The Economist.
Italy has been among the most reticent of countries in terms of its support for Ukraine. That's not the case with Mr. Draghi. Mr. Draghi has been unequivocally, very much in the style of Boris Johnson, a supporter of Ukraine and a supporter of sending not just aid but arms to Ukraine.
The future of all that will be in doubt. Just last week, Italy's foreign minister accused Prime Minister Draghi's critics of doing Vladimir Putin's dirty work for him by opposing the continued existence of the coalition government in Rome. And one of the reasons why Prime Minister Draghi's resignation has caused such concern across Europe is due to the threat it may end up posing to Western unity in the face of Russia's aggression. The main news again. Steve Bannon, Donald Trump's political strategist, has been convicted of contempt of Congress and faces up to 2 years in jail. The United Nations says a deal to restore exports of grain from Ukraine will bring relief and help stabilize global food prices. And the company that operates the Channel Tunnel says delays at French border control points created 6-hour queues on Friday outside Dover. There's more from us on Twitter at Feature Story. And that is the latest Feature Story news. Simon Marks reporting.
An unpopular police officer thinks about committing a racially motivated offense for a little support. A middle-aged man is having the best snacks of his life, and a housefly drops everything to go stand on a watermelon slice. This is the Onion Week in Review. Noting the youth center's ping pong table and array of DVDs and Blu-rays, local youth minister Mark Kindler told reporters this week that his church's new rec room has everything a teen could want. The youth pastor revealed that the basement facility's many teen-friendly amenities include a new Wii U console, an iPod dock for the teens to play any music they like, and some comfortable recliners for those who just want to relax or do their homework after school.
We've really gone out of our way to give the rec room a laid-back atmosphere. It's stocked with snacks, but sometimes at the end of the week, we'll spring for some pizza. Honestly, I wish I had a place like this when I was their age.
In other news, increased violence leads the State Department to issue an advisory for Americans traveling to 1861, and an elderly lobbyist is always droning on about how little legislation used to cost in his day.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join us here and bring up whatever you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ian with you tonight.
And Chris.
And Chris is here courtesy of his show, which is Freedom Decrypted. You can find that over at freedomdecrypted.com. It happens every Saturday evening, 5 o'clock Eastern Time is when it starts. You can, of course, not watch it live if you want. You can watch anytime over at freedomdecrypted.com. You can also listen via their podcast version of the show. If you like technology and you like freedom, then you're really going to like freedomdecrypted.com. So we've been digging in through, just scratching the surface, honestly, of this survey that came out, the very first one that I'm aware of, at least, that is focused on New Hampshire and questions relating to secession. And the thing I really like about this survey, besides the fact that they did both of those things, is that it was conducted by Survey USA on behalf of the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence. And that means that the folks at the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence, they're the ones who got to write the questions. And as you know, the questions you ask on a survey are a pretty big factor in kind of the answers that come in. So it is important to have the right questions. As I was saying before, the previous survey that was of the most interest as far as New Hampshire was concerned was a question that was regional. I believe it was conducted by YouGov with Brightline Watch. And if you look that one up, you'll see that they found that about 34% of respondents in New England wanted to see their state secede from the United States and join a regional arrangement of states, a regional federation of states. So that really wasn't the question I think any of us wanted to see asked. Mm-hmm. It's still a good question to kind of gauge sort of a general interest in secession, but we still didn't have specific to New Hampshire info, and we didn't have a really good question about secession. Of course, the really good question that we all wanted to know, I think, is what do the people of New Hampshire think about just saying goodbye? No, we don't want to talk about joining a federation, because I think most people in New Hampshire are not interested in being aligned with Massachusetts.
I don't want to be governed by New York any more than I want to be governed by Washington, D.C.
Well, I don't think the proposal was to include New York, but it might have been for all I know. I don't have the
Boston.
map in front of me. But yeah, I don't want to be tied,
seriously?
Yeah, I don't want to be tied politically to the people in Massachusetts or Connecticut or most of the rest of New England, for that matter. New Hampshire is a sort of oasis of freedom by comparison to the surrounding states. And so what would happen if people in New Hampshire were asked about New Hampshire going its own way? We didn't get a chance to ask on the ballot this year because the ballot measure, the constitutional amendment proposal, CACR 32, didn't make it through the state house. And one of the reasons why it didn't make it through is because the state reps don't think there's support for independence. Now we have the information to show they are not correct about that. Now, there may not be a majority support across the board at this point, but that can change. And that is one of the things that I believe the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence pointed out here in their summary, which appears at nhindependence.org. They do point out here that more than 2/5 of the respondents to this survey, 42% of them, support the idea of placing independence, a question about it, on the ballot. And only 47% currently oppose it, which means there's enough people on the fence on that question to move it in the direction of, let's do this thing. So history is filled with proposals, this is what nhindependence.org says, that seemed at first to be politically impossible, but after serious discussion and evolving circumstances, proved to be politically inevitable. To take just one example, shall issue laws for concealed carry licenses, once viewed as extreme, are now the law in nearly every state. As the results of this poll show, peaceful separation from the United States already has more support now than shall issue laws had in 1990. So
it'll be interesting if we can effectively get independence without declaring independence.
What do you mean
by
that?
Other means like nullification and there's just some other ideas on how you can go about this. And some of the marijuana, weed, right? That's a good example of nullification, right?
Of the states that have decriminalized fully or legalized weed.
It's not technically legal anywhere in the United States.
That's right.
But it's effectively legal. And at least
it's legal to possess in a bunch of states, but it's not legal to grow it still. It's not legal without government permission. It's not legal to sell it without government permission.
Nowhere is it legal to grow it without government permission?
There is some home grow provisions, I think, in Vermont, for instance. So I think in those cases you would say that's legal. But you
I clearly don't follow that specific issue closely enough as much as I support it.
You certainly cannot sell it without government permission in any of those states. So there's no true cannabis freedom. But anyway, going back here to the point they're making about the shall issue permits. So in 1990, there were fewer people who supported shall issue. Meaning, for folks that don't know, that means to get a gun permit, you just go and say, I want a gun permit, and then they have to give it to you. Right? That's all that means.
We have even more than that in New Hampshire, correct?
We have concealed carry without a...
because we don't have to ask permission for either concealed or open carry, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
You can still get a permit in New Hampshire if you want one, but you do not need a permit to conceal carry here.
And that has to do with reciprocity or something?
If you wanted to carry in the reciprocity states, which are not all of them, but only a small amount of them, then you could get the permit, and that would allow that. But they're talking about just shall issue, just the policy of you want a permit, you ask for it, you're supposed to get it.
Right.
And so that was controversial. It wasn't as popular in 1990 as secession is today, but they're saying now it's the supermajority of states that have shall issue. So that changed in the roughly 30 years that it took for that to change. It took, it still took half a lifetime for it to change, because that's the system, and it is not a fast-moving thing at all.
There's a reason the Free State Project was in our lifetime.
But this is a different issue. I mean, a fundamentally different issue. People have very, very strong feelings on both, but guns, there's just some people that are never going to come on board with that, and there's some people that are never going to come on board with secession or declaring independence from the United States. But I think the secession issue could move faster than that. It's not going to take, I don't think it'll take 30 years for this to happen.
You know what a good question that should have been asked, I think, on the survey is whether or not you support independence from from England.
If you would have, or you do support it?
If you do support it.
Okay.
Right? Because ultimately, if you don't support New Hampshire's exit, right, why would you support the U.S.'s exit from
It could show
New
some
England?
Hypocrisy.
Right. It's very hypocritical, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. So I think one of the reasons why it could go faster than the gun issue is, as we pointed out, the federal government's going to keep getting worse. They're going to keep giving us new reasons for people to want to leave. They're going to piss more people off as years and months go by. So they're going to recruit people for us. Old people are less likely to support secession. They are going to pass away, and that's going to change the demographics. And you've got this thing of migration going on. Not just the Free State Project migration, which is bringing libertarians to New Hampshire, which is the reason, honestly, why CACR 32, the ballot measure, was put forward. It's because of Free Stater state reps that happened. So you've got those pressures going on, but also just people who don't know anything about the Free State Project, who just want to be in a more free place, they naturally move to New Hampshire, and that's been happening for decades. And that's increasing now with people leaving places. We were at a meetup today, you and I.
That's right.
There's a Friday hangout here in the Keene area, and there was a lady there who lives in Portland, Oregon, and she is sick of it. She's ready to get out of Portland, and she's like a doctor or something, and she didn't say exactly what she did, but she said she has a medical license. And so, I mean, she's probably got a lot of loose ends to wrap up, but she's kind of dipping her feet into the world of New Hampshire to see what it's like.
Exploratory is where she was at, and I suspect in not too long she will probably be looking for houses to either rent or buy or something.
Right, and she's not the only one.
Yeah.
She came up here earlier this year, and they had a bus tour of part of New Hampshire that she went on to kind of check out the lay of the land.
And to come up here and do all that without any desire to move is highly unlikely. I mean, she came from Washington, right? All the way across the country. Right?
She's just going to go slow with it and take her time and
Portland. I think she was talking about Portland. So I mean, she came all the way across the country. So it's not something you do.
That's a commitment,
right? Lightly, right? Yeah. And we see this, and this is just one example. This happens all the time in little old Keene, New Hampshire, which has 23,000 people. I mean, if you're seeing that as frequently as we do, you can just. Yeah,
there's a lot more people looking at Manchester,
lot of people. Yeah,
Concord,
definitely.
Nashua, the big population centers here. So the migration of people is going to help accelerate this. As people see the wins that we're having on the fronts of secession, they're going to say, I want to be where the winners are.
I'm shocked at how many wins we have in New Hampshire.
There's more coming up. You can join us here. This is Free Talk Live.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
Uncovering the secrets and exposing the lies. That's what the readers of freedomsphoenix.com get every day. freedomsphoenix.com, constantly providing the information, the real news about government policies, and the real relationship we all have with the coercive government. The real condition of the economy, innovations in technology, breakthroughs in energy, health, and computer science. Learn the truth well before it's admitted to in the lamestream media. The corporate media, nothing more than distributors of government propaganda, but now there's an alternative. freedomsphoenix.com. Constant news updates on the issues that affect your life in the most important ways. With liberty and property under constant attack, freedomsphoenix.com provides the understanding behind the propaganda, and it encourages the participation of its readers. Go to freedomsphoenix.com. That's freedoms with an S, phoenix.com. freedomsphoenix.com. The revolution between the ears has already happened.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
How many lawyers does it take to change a light bulb? None. They'd rather keep their clients in the dark. There are too many lawyer jokes to count. However, there are some lawyers with more noble intentions. At the Institute for Justice, we bring the light to our clients. We are a non-profit public interest law firm with clear values and principles. At IJ, we fight for those whose most basic rights are denied by the government. Visit our website today at ij.org.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. The phones are open and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian
and Chris.
We're going over a survey that asked thousands of people in total across 8 states. It was 625 people per state. The states were those of the southeast United States, starting at Texas, going all the way over to Florida, Hawaii, and New Hampshire, looking at questions in regards to independence. We're going to continue with that discussion. Of course, you can bring up whatever you want. Free Talk Live is also brought to you by Freedom's Phoenix. That's a great place to go and get the libertarian perspective when it comes to the news of the day. They get it done every single day over at Freedom's Phoenix. They cover economic news, government overreach, insane government spending, and more. You can get all the headlines in one place. And from that fresh libertarian perspective at freedomsphoenix.com. That's freedoms with an S, phoenix.com. As we continue digging through some of these numbers here, there's 27 questions in this survey. We're not going to go through all of them, but the full survey, crosstabs, all that stuff is going to be available. I'll be posting it to Free Keen sometime within the next 24 hours. It's not up yet. I just didn't have time to put it together. So you're hearing about a lot of this at the same time as I am, Chris. We got a teaser last night from the folks over at the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence at nhendependence.org. They've got a short article up that goes over some of the basics of this. In short, it's roughly 1 out of 3, not quite. Yep. 29% of New Hampshire respondents in this survey support the idea of New Hampshire being an independent state. 52% of Republicans here in New Hampshire support the idea of New Hampshire being an independent state. And so far, right? And
I got to keep saying that, so far.
And we're just getting this thing started. So I think it's a great starting point. And I just wanted to go over some of the basics here, and this is as reported by Survey USA. So at the very top of all the data, Survey USA themselves, the actual polling firm, they did kind of a quick breakdown of some of the important takeaways. And so here's what they had to say. So they asked New Hampshire adults a series of questions about the current state of politics in the United States. And respondents were asked how much they agreed or disagreed with these 6 statements. Statement 1. People in the United States are growing more and more divided over important issues such as LGBT rights, guns, abortion, election integrity, race relations, involvement in foreign wars, climate change, immigration, etc. 91% of the respondents to this survey in New Hampshire either said they strongly or somewhat agree with that statement. Next statement. If the citizens of the United States continue to get more divided on major issues, I fear that political violence will increase. 89% of respondents agreed that more political violence will be coming as people continue to be divided on these issues. And there's no evidence that people are going to become, coming together. There's not going to be this, moment where that's going to happen. I mean, I can't see it.
Why would it?
You could argue that in 2001...
I mean, you're disagreeing. We're all disagreeing with each other, so why would we come together on it?
You could argue...
if that makes no sense.
Well, okay, I'll make the argument, though. In 2001, September 11th, that there was the attacks, of course, that happened, and people seemed to come together in that moment.
Or people were too afraid to speak out against it.
Could be. I'm not talking about the incident itself, whether or not it was real or not real, but...
Well, the government's reaction.
People quote unquote, came together and, picked up the American flag and waved the American flag and were like, we're going to war. We don't care about what the other side says. We're going to come together and go kill some towel heads, right? There was this sort of Middle Eastern sentiment, anti-Iraq, if you will, sentiment that came out of that.
Yeah, Democrats and Republicans came out as being this racist kind of ideology.
Yeah. So, but how long did that really last for? How long did that coming together
a decade
of Americans for?
I mean,
not even really. I mean, people I think quickly learned that there were lies being told.
Obviously, it was supported more so the day of, right? And it slowly, waned from there. But
yeah, I mean, how long did it take before we learned that the Yellow Cake claims were false? It was just a few years. It didn't take that long before it started to be crystal clear that the U.S. government was lying to people about this war. So I think that facade did not last very long for them. And the same thing is true of COVID, right? When the whole COVID thing started, there were some people who were really, really concerned about it, and then they started learning about all the lies that were being told, and within a 12-month period, there was a tremendous change as far as what people were willing to do when they were told to by the government. At first, a lot of people were willing to do what they were told because they were afraid, and then they didn't see people dying, and so they didn't become as afraid.
I think partially it was because we first of all, at a certain point, especially early on, it had hit the United States, so we couldn't have seen it.
Yeah.
Second of all, our government whether we like it or not, was flip-flopping, every other day. Because first they were telling us not to wear masks, and then they were telling us we should wear masks. Sure. It's like, are they ineffective or are they not? Are they effective or are they not effective? And it's like, how do you trust, a government that's lying to you? And, they start off with lying to you, saying they're ineffective. And then they went to telling you to wear something, that was definitely ineffective.
The cloth masks, you mean?
Yeah.
So that's the lesson, of course, you should take away is you should never trust the government. You should never believe what it is that they're saying. They don't have your best interests at heart. They're not interested in helping you. They're just interested in their own power, and that became more clear to a large number of people.
Yeah, I mean, even if that wasn't the case, right? It's certainly, at least it shows incompetence.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, you can always count on them for that too. But my point is that for all of the people that quote unquote came together during that time, it didn't last even as long as the illusion of 9/11. Like the whole illusion of 9/11 might, as you said, last some number of years. Yeah,
definitely longer than 9/11.
This one, it didn't last as long as 9/11.
I'm sorry. That's right. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah, this one fell apart relatively quickly. I mean, you had maybe most of the first year, but then after that, it just.
I mean, I think within the first 3 to 6 months, even.
It was pretty quick. And that's because information travels faster than it did 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, we had the internet 20 years ago, but there weren't as many users of it. It wasn't as established in our lives. And so I think that the whole idea of Americans coming together again for something like this, I don't think it's going to have the same effect, even if another war starts tomorrow. I mean, look at Ukraine, for instance. There has been a lot of support of that, but at the same time, it does seem to be on political lines to some extent. So ultimately, I think we're going to see people driven further apart. Back to the survey. So this, again, talking to people in New Hampshire, and these are questions that were asked initially regarding people's feelings about the federal government. So another statement, whether or not people agree with this. The federal government's financial decisions and economic regulations hurt our livelihoods and could lead to inflation and bankruptcy. 79% of people strongly or somewhat agreed with that statement.
How could you disagree? It's already happening. Well, I mean, the inflation at least part has started. I mean, what are we up this year? Like, so it was some insane number. Do you remember what the numbers are?
Well, so far, the numbers that just came out were for the year until
year to date.
July.
Okay.
And that was 9.1. Oh, wait, was that June?
Those were official numbers, not unofficial.
Sorry, that wasn't July. June. So, yeah, the official number, 9.1% CPI.
And they're supposedly like to keep to 2-3%. So that's huge.
That's right. And that's, again, they're highly manipulated numbers. There's an unofficial number saying it's like 17%.
Which is much more likely.
The number, if you want to join us, 603-283-6160. So we're seeing a lot of dissatisfaction in this poll with the federal government. So that can be used against them over time and to convert more people to the ideas of independence. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here. And I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Steve Bannon, Donald Trump's political strategist, has been convicted of contempt of Congress at a criminal trial in Washington. Jury deliberations took less than 3 hours, and Mr. Bannon now faces the possibility of thousands of dollars in fines and up to 2 years in jail. He was prosecuted on 2 counts of refusing to cooperate with the House Select Committee that's investigating last year's riot on Capitol Hill by Donald Trump's supporters. With the details, NBC News Radio's Pete Williams.
1 for refusing to testify before the January 6th committee, and a 2nd count for refusing to provide documents to the January 6th committee. The statute here is not very often used. It's been more than half a century since anybody was ever ordered to go to serve any time in jail for contempt of Congress.
And Mr. Bannon will be sentenced on October the 21st. The United Nations says a deal to restore exports of grain from Ukraine will bring relief and help stabilize global food prices. The agreement was signed in Turkey between Russia and Ukraine on Friday. From FSN's bureau at UN headquarters in New York, Sarah Walton reports.
At the signing ceremony in Istanbul, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said the deal to restart shipments of grain from Ukraine will bring relief for the most vulnerable people on the edge of famine. It took 3 months of negotiations, facilitated by the UN and Turkish officials, for Moscow and Kiev to agree to the deal that will see Ukrainian captains navigate ships from 3 Black Sea ports to Turkey, where they'll be unloaded and the grain shipped on. Vessels returning to Ukraine will then be inspected by a joint team of Turkish, UN, Ukrainian and Russian officials to confirm they're not carrying weapons. The operation's expected to begin in the coming weeks, shipping 5 million tonnes of grain a month. Sarah Walton, New York.
We've had an update today on President Joe Biden's health. The White House says he is responding well to treatment for COVID-19 and has again been working while in isolation in the White House residence. He had a slightly elevated temperature last night, but his vital signs are now said to be normal and he continues to be treated with the antiviral Paxlovid. The company that operates the Channel Tunnel says it's rejecting a French explanation for delays that paralysed the British port of Dover at the start of a big travel weekend. Eurotunnel says delays at French border control points created 6-hour queues outside Dover. Lisa Minot is travel editor for The Sun.
Just as the airports seem to be finally getting a grip and calming down and people are being able to get away happily through airports, 900,000 are going to be heading off from UK airports this weekend. Now we have this critical incident at Dover where they've got huge queues.
And Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, battling Rishi Sunak to become the next UK Prime Minister, is demanding that French authorities limit any further disruption. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here if you want. The number 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can join us online, of course. Just head over to freetalklive.com and enjoy the various features we have waiting for you there. It's freetalklive.com. If you want, you can support the show like Brian Simmons has done. Brian is a silver-level supporter of our AMPS program. AMPS stands for Advertise, Market, and Promote and Support. And it's a way for you to help us for as little as $5 a month to help us get Free Talk Live on a more great radio stations. If you like the content of this program, it's the best way to help directly support us. So once again, that's amps.freetalklive.com. That takes you right to our Patreon, amps.freetalklive.com. We've been sharing with you the survey results, or a selection of them, because there's a lot of them. There's 27 questions on this survey as promoted by the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence at nhendependence.org. We actually have the president of that foundation on right now, Elliot.
Hi, perfect timing.
Welcome, sir. Oh, well, we've been covering this thing all night so far tonight, so I'm glad to have you checking in here, because you're the guy that got the news out about this first yesterday over on your website, libertyblock.com, and also nhendependence.org. We've been digging through here in this survey. We talked about the 29% of people in New Hampshire that already are ready to go from the United States. They support New Hampshire being an independent nation. 52% of Republicans in New Hampshire supporting that. And we also highlighted the fact that older people not as interested in secession. So over time, just as elderly folks are dying off, we're going to see a shift in these numbers. Plus, people migrating here is going to help us shift the numbers. Plus, the federal government becoming more tyrannical, which we can all count on, is going to shift these numbers.
You know what also shifted? Not even just them dying off, but people fleeing New Hampshire. Old people tend to flee New Hampshire. It's cold in the wintertime. They don't like the cold usually. So I could see just, that too.
There's a surprising number of them that stay here, though.
It's true, but if you start looking at like the percentage of the population that's aging and getting into the elderly category, that number is going up, and as that number goes up, that in theory should hurt us. But I think it's not gonna be as bad as you think, because I think a lot of them are gonna be leaving.
What do you think about this, Elliot? Obviously, you've had basically the last few days to dissect this and mull it over, and you already wrote up a couple articles about it. But what are we missing? What have we not talked about? I don't know if you've been privy to the whole conversation so far. So go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with Penguin and you that it's only going to keep climbing. This is the baseline, and we thought it would be a little lower, most of the numbers. So I'm pleasantly surprised that 29% in New Hampshire are already ready to secede today.
Yeah.
52% of Republicans, and that's tremendous. That means Republicans, when we're talking about Republican primaries and stuff like that, and the convention, the majority are ready to secede today. And obviously some are unsure, so a lot less than half don't want to secede. So I think only like 35% of Republicans don't want to secede, and the majority want to. A few other interesting parts of the survey that were pleasantly surprising to me. It was all pleasantly surprising. Some wasn't fantastic, some was fantastic, but it was amazing. One of the big things that my own brother and a lot of others, and I think that's probably what we were arguing about, Laser, and maybe we were on the show, is he obviously supports independence, but thinks that if we leave the Union, everyone will support the federal government coming in with military, like Brody DeShays said, the statist, pro-union, anti-independence, anti-freedom representative, and a lot of others believe that the federal government could and should come in with the military and kill us all. This poll in New Hampshire and all 8 states showed that 3%, just 3% of people in the United States believe that the federal government should use military force against a state that chooses to secede. Whereas like 56% said there should be 0 penalties for a state that wants to secede. They totally should secede, and it's awesome, and there should not even be economic penalties like sanctions for them. So only 3% support violence, meaning I'm pretty much 100% sure there would be 0.
Just a minor correction on that from what Survey USA says here in their summary. The average across all 8 states that they surveyed, it was 6% would back a military attack to keep the state in the Union, but that's still nothing. I mean, that's barely any support.
Okay.
With 57.
New Hampshire was 3%. Right?
New Hampshire was 3%, with 57% of the people in the 8 states surveyed said the state, in whatever state it is, whatever state leaves first, should be allowed to go. That there should be no sanctions. 37% said economic sanctions should be utilized to punish that state, and 6% said military attack. So almost no one believes the military should be used.
You know what I'd love to see is a T-shirt that says the majority of Republicans support independence, alongside only 3% of the population would support an attack on New Hampshire.
Seems like a little wordy for a T-shirt.
It does, but shorten it a little bit. Somehow figure out how to shorten that, and I think it would be a great message to send to other people who are potential supporters.
That'd be amazing. And a few other things in the survey, some interesting questions that I'm glad were on the survey, especially now with the results, is when asked if you knew, so they were asked, the people in the survey, if you knew there was a political movement that was, working to support independence, which is like the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence, or the New Hampshire Independence PAC, how much would you donate or volunteer? So for the question is, how much would you donate in a typical year? Only 65% said nothing. So between like 12% said they would donate and 23% were unsure. So only 65% would donate nothing, meaning like potentially 35% would donate to us, be regular donors to the FNHI per year. If 35% of the state donated to us, we'd be in really, really good shape. And similar for volunteering time, only 59% of people said they wouldn't volunteer their time for the FNHI. That's tremendous. It's incredible. 17% said they totally would donate, and 23% are unsure. So again, if only 59% wouldn't volunteer their time, that's incredible. Potentially, 41% of people would volunteer their time for independence. That means a lot of people feel very strongly about independence in New Hampshire.
Yeah, if you're willing to put time or money behind an issue, then that means you have a really strong feeling about it. There's no doubt about it. And again, these are all reasons why the numbers of people supporting independence here are going to grow over time, because, the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence, it's been around for a decade, but so far, up until this year with this survey, this poll that we're talking about tonight, so far the foundation has done little more than put out a really great flyer that you and I, Alu, have been the kings of putting out into people's hands over the last decade, and they haven't done a whole lot else. They got a good website. It's got some great points, persuasive points on it, but this is the first time the foundation has really put something into motion, and I think it's a good move.
Almost everything that's been done has been done pretty much almost even after a lot of it's been done after the CACR 32.
Well, that did kind of get the ball rolling. That's true.
It did. It
and
did.
So we owe a lot to the state representatives who.
It really did. We have NH Exit bumper stickers now too. We have NH Exit T-shirts.
You're wearing one, right? We didn't coordinate, but you and I are wearing NH Exit shirts tonight.
Yep. I mean, and this is the thing. It's like, we didn't have any of this, up until
a year ago.
Yeah, we didn't have this a year ago. So people are just beginning to hear about NH Exit in the first place. So it can only grow from here, it seems.
Yeah, it's going to keep growing. And one thing that you guys haven't mentioned that much, one of the reasons why it's going to grow so much is DC. Just look at what DC politicians are doing. Look at Biden. Look at the printing. I heard they sent another few $100 million to Zelensky, the Ukrainian corrupt Nazi or whatever regime status are there. I don't really care who they are, but they're all evil government gangs. So they're printing and sending and borrowing hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. And every time I hear that, by the way, I go find Silver Dave and buy more gold and silver, because it means that the dollar is losing value, and I just want to get out ahead of it. So they're billions away.
You know what would be funny is to print, not counterfeit money, but fake dollars and start handing them out just to demonstrate how worthless the U.S. dollar really is. If the U.S. government prints money, well, I can print money too, right?
It would have to be dramatically different than the dollar to not get a counterfeiting.
For sure.
The Nashua local TV yesterday with Jocelyn Davis, and I was doing a thing of the basics of real money, of gold and silver, and a bunch of other stuff, gold backs and silver bits, and copper, how they took the copper and silver out of the money. And one of the things I showed was a few bills I have. I showed gold backs, but I also showed I have $2 million bills. They're fake $1 million bills. Of course, when my grandfather gave it to me like 15 years ago before he passed away, he used to always have one on him, and it's $1 million, and you go into a store and say, hey, I want to buy your store. It's a funny joke. Thankfully, we haven't been arrested for counterfeit stuff, because it looks very realistic. But I was showing people, because I showed them the $100 trillion Zimbabwe note, and I showed the TV camera, and I said, this $1 million American bill, this is our future in a a few years to keep going with my inflation.
Elliot, do you want to stay, or you said everything you need to say?
I'm gonna hop off.
You said what now?
He's gonna hop off.
I'm gonna hop off.
All right, man. Hey, thank you. Keep up the great work out there. That's Elliot Axelman. He is the current president of the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence, and they are the ones behind the survey we've been talking about throughout the show here tonight. If you want to weigh in, there's a few more things to highlight, and we'll get into those as well. Coming up here, this is Free Talk Live.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Are you making sense to the boomer mindset? I'm Holland Cook from survivalspeech.com. 80 million baby boomers comprise 25% of the population and control most of the USA's wealth. As aging parents pass on, they'll control more. Boomers are 46 to 65 years old and regard themselves as midlife. They identify as neither young nor old. They're post-minivan and pre-retirement, and they don't like being called boomers. They think me. Many of the purchases boomer couples make are individual purposes. They've been experimenters all their lives. If you want their attention, tell stories and keep it simple. If something seems complicated, boomers can dismiss it as, I don't need this. And if you're looking for work, you may be applying to a boomer, so relate accordingly. From survivalspeech.com, I'm Holland Cook.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. Phones are open if you want to join us here. We're talking about a historic poll from New Hampshire and 7 other states, by the way. This also happened in the southeastern states from Texas all the way through Florida, as well as Hawaii. So 8 states in total with 625 poll respondents per state, looking at various different questions about independence and what would people support if a state like California or Texas or Hawaii were to declare independence from the United States. Do people want to see the military sent in to stop it? Turns out, no. People don't want to see that happen. And we have speculated for years here on Free Talk Live that if the U.S. federal government were to roll tanks or send troops into a state that has declared independence, that it would be very unpopular amongst the people of the rest of America at that point. And this poll backs that up, with only 6% of Americans in this poll saying they would support military intervention for secession.
I wonder if there would be a difference between opinions if it was one small state like New Hampshire versus, I don't know, say half the country.
What do you mean?
I mean, like, let's say there was a civil war again, right? Or I'm not a civil war.
You mean only one state going versus
right,
a
like
bunch of states?
One state or a couple states going, as opposed to, you know, like during the Civil War, half the country was divided basically. You know.
Well, all they asked about was one state here, and Hawaii is a small state, so they asked about Hawaii, and again, very small numbers. I mean, only 6% on average. I think in New Hampshire it was like 3%.
Yeah,
were in favor of military intervention, with the majority of respondents saying just let them go.
Yeah,
on average it was 57% of the respondents just said just let them go.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine how it would like hurt you if somebody else left, right? Like,
it wouldn't. It's just not even the whole butthurt of, oh no, we have to take a star off the flag.
It's not even like trade. It's not like trade is going to stop. I mean, you know, this is the thing.
Well, now wait a minute. There were 37% say economic sanctions should be used. So there are people who would say, shut down the trade.
But I'm saying it doesn't have to, right?
No, it doesn't.
And if you look at other countries that have broken up, trade generally, it doesn't stop. I mean, you still need, even look at Germany and Europe and Russia, right? Mm-hmm. There's even a war, right? And yet the oil's still flowing for the most part, up until very recently anyway, right?
Yeah, as far as Germany.
And it had a huge economic harm to stop that trade.
Mm-hmm.
So if it takes that level of conflict,
and that's actual war,
right?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think people probably aren't thinking too far about this. Those that are saying, economic sanctions, are they remembering that they might have family members in that state? Have they even thought about that? So a couple of details here from the summary at surveyusa.com. This is from the actual survey data. They're looking at the respondents. We're just looking at New Hampshire. We haven't dug in through. We looked at Texas earlier this week because that happened to be out. The first 7 states came out earlier this week. New Hampshire just came out today. 65% of respondents agreed with this statement. Either strongly or somewhat agreed. Quote, politicians in Washington, D.C. violate our rights more than they protect our rights. And again, that's after 79% said that federal government's financial decisions and economic regulations hurt livelihoods and could lead to inflation and bankruptcy. 64% of people agreed that laws, regulations, and court rulings coming out of D.C. are incompatible with New Hampshire's culture of freedom. So again, you've got a tremendous number of people here in New Hampshire who are agreeing that the federal government is overwhelmingly negative as far as our lives are concerned. All we have to do is convince them that their lives would be better without that influence. That a more free place is possible. All we have to do is walk away from this arrangement, and then things get better. I don't see how it could go any other way, barring a nuclear weapon being dropped on New Hampshire.
That would make no sense at all.
No,
it would have more.
Happen.
That's the funny thing is, it would have a worse effect on the surrounding population because there's a greater number of people surrounding New Hampshire,
and it would make them look terrible.
Boston is, an hour away from our major population centers. Yeah. So you would literally be taking out Boston and Boston. I don't know what, but I think Boston alone has a population greater than all of New Hampshire. So you might actually end up doing more damage to more of your own people who are more of your own people, so to speak, than you would in New Hampshire, because at least part of New Hampshire won't be within the blast zone, whereas all of Boston would be.
Yeah, so really this whole process, Chris, is going to be, and it always has been, it's going to be about changing those hearts and minds. It's going to be about convincing the majority of the people in New Hampshire to come on board with secession. We've already got almost 1 out of 3 of them, and we only need 2 out of 3.
Yeah, that's true.
In order to get through a constitutional amendment, if it gets on the ballot, which takes 60% of the state house and 60% of the state senate, we need 2/3 to pass it. We got almost 1/3 already, so we're almost half of the way there. I mean, that's another way to look at this, right?
Yeah,
you don't
definitely
need 100%. You need 67%.
Yep. And if the numbers keep rising as far as free staters, getting elected, we went from 20 to 30 to 40 in 3 election cycles.
The Democrats are now saying we have 50.
Yeah, people keep making, I keep hearing different numbers, but the numbers I'm going off of, I believe, are directly from the Free State Project specifically. So I tend to suspect their numbers are more accurate.
Yeah, I think they said 44. But sometimes the Dems are pretty good at researching this stuff. I mean, they put a lot of time and money into figuring out things about the Free State Project. It's certainly possible that they know more than the Free State Project does about their own movement.
They could. The other thing I've noticed too is depending on how you word it, it might be a slightly different number. So maybe there's 50 libertarians, right? Or as opposed to 40 free staters. The number sounds higher, but it's actually it's higher because there's some of those people are already in New Hampshire, so they're not technically free staters.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
a couple more highlights here. 63% agree that they trust their state government more than they trust the federal government, and 43% say that states shouldn't even need permission from the federal government to peacefully separate it. Now, this is an important issue. 45% disagree with that statement, so there's some number that's on the fence. That number that's on the fence could be moved in our direction. So it's almost an even split on whether or not people think you should ask permission from the federal government before you leave. And it's like, no. You don't ask the abuser if you can leave. This guy's going to beat you, right? Like, he's been beating you, he's been abusing you, he's been tying you up, he's been starving you, and you have the opportunity to run out the door. You don't just say, "Oh, excuse me, can you loosen my ropes first?"
Yeah, And the thing that amazes me is that somebody would even think you would need to ask permission. I mean, did you ask permission? Here's the thing. Especially in the case of New Hampshire. New Hampshire's constitution predates the United States. If our constitution in New Hampshire allowed joining the union, certainly it has to allow, disengaging from that union, right?
Yeah, there's no prohibition on that. And then most importantly, there's no prohibition on leaving in the United States Constitution. Because that's what everybody wants to point to. Like, well, here's the rules. This is the rules for how the U.S. government's supposed to be run. There's a process to join. And that makes sense. If you want to join a club, you usually have to have someone sponsor you in, and you got to pay a fee, and you got to swear an oath, or whatever it is you have to do to join the club. But if you want to leave the club, usually you just tell them you're out, or you never come back, right? Like, there's not really a big process to rescinding somebody's membership from a group. And so in this case, the proposal here in the CACR 32, the proposal that would have gone on the ballot had it passed through the State House and the State Senate, this historic proposal, simply said it's over. It just said we're going to declare peaceful independence. If this thing passes, New Hampshire declares its peaceful independence from the United States. That's it. End of story. Y'all want to negotiate? That's fine. We can talk about military bases. Here's
the thing. A lot of that stuff, declaring independence doesn't mean that there's no negotiations thereafter. You can negotiate on trade and make trade deals if that is what the other side insists on doing, right?
Sure.
The United States might be like, okay, well, we won't invade, but of course we're not going to trade with you unless we have some sort of trade deal. Okay, fine. Well, then we have to come to the table and decide: do we want to negotiate with them, or do we not? I mean, in theory, we could say, oh, we don't want to negotiate with you, and then they would have to make a decision on what to do after that. Right?
I think that most people would agree we want to have good relations with our neighbors. We want to have good agreements with Canada, and we want to have good agreements with whatever remains of the United States.
Right.
After the dominoes fall, because I suspect that when the first state says goodbye, whether it's Texas, whether it's California, whether it's New Hampshire, once one goes, it's going to be a matter of months before the next one goes, or a couple years or something like that. You're going to see movements for secession spring up where they didn't exist before, because then you've shown that something's possible. Something is not possible unless people believe that it's possible. And a lot of people, they won't believe it until they see it. They just won't.
Well, there's definitely an increasing number of secession movements in the United States. So,
yep. What we need is the liberty-loving people who want to actually succeed need to migrate to New Hampshire as soon as possible to make this happen as quickly as we can make it happen, because, time is of the essence here. Tyranny's on the rise. Hour 3's coming up.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Steve Bannon, Donald Trump's political strategist, has been convicted of contempt of Congress at a criminal trial in Washington. Jury deliberations took less than 3 hours, and Mr. Bannon now faces the possibility of thousands of dollars in fines and up to 2 years in jail. He was prosecuted on 2 counts of refusing to cooperate with the House Select Committee that's investigating last year's riot on Capitol Hill by Donald Trump's supporters. With the details, NBC News Radio's Pete Williams.
One for refusing to testify before the January 6th committee, and a second count for refusing to provide documents to the January 6th committee. The statute here is not very often used. It's been more than half a century since anybody was ever ordered to go to serve any time in jail for contempt of Congress.
And Mr. Bannon will be sentenced on October the 21st. The United Nations says a deal to restore exports of grain from Ukraine will bring relief and help stabilize global food prices. The agreement was signed in Turkey between Russia and Ukraine on Friday. From FSN's bureau at UN headquarters in New York, Sarah Walton reports.
At the signing ceremony in Istanbul, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said the deal to restart shipments of grain from Ukraine will bring relief for the most vulnerable people on the edge of famine. It took 3 months of negotiations, facilitated by the UN and Turkish officials, for Moscow and Kiev to agree to the deal that will see Ukrainian captains navigate ships from 3 Black Sea ports to Turkey, where they'll be unloaded and the grain shipped on. Vessels returning to Ukraine will then be inspected by a joint team of Turkish, UN, Ukrainian and Russian officials to confirm they're not carrying weapons. The operation is expected to begin in the coming weeks, shipping 5 million tonnes of grain a month. Sarah Walton, New York.
We've had an update today on President Joe Biden's health. The White House says he is responding well to treatment for COVID-19 and has again been working while in isolation in the White House residence. He had a slightly elevated temperature last night, but his vital signs are now said to be normal and he continues to be treated with the antiviral Paxlovid. The company that operates the Channel Tunnel says it's rejecting a French explanation for delays that paralysed the British port of Dover at the start of a big travel weekend. Eurotunnel says delays at French border control points created 6-hour queues outside Dover. Lisa Minot is travel editor for The Sun.
Just as the airports seem to be finally getting a grip and calming down and people are being able to get away happily through airports, 900,000 are going to be heading off from UK airports this weekend. Now we have this critical incident at Dover where they've got huge queues.
And Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, battling Rishi Sunak to become the next UK Prime Minister, is demanding that French authorities limit any further disruption. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking in more detail today at the impact of the Italian government's collapse on the crisis in Ukraine, with Italians heading for fresh elections within the next 70 days after Prime Minister Mario Draghi's resignation was accepted by Italy's president yesterday. It's clear that Rome's continued support of Ukraine's efforts to repulse the Russian invasion will be one of the central issues on the ballot. John Hooper is Italy correspondent for The Economist.
Italy has been among the most reticent of countries in terms of its support for Ukraine. That's not the case with Mr. Draghi. Mr. Draghi has been unequivocally very much in the style of Boris Johnson, a supporter of Ukraine and a supporter of sending not just aid but arms to Ukraine.
The future of all that will be in doubt. Just last week, Italy's foreign minister accused Prime Minister Draghi's critics of doing Vladimir Putin's dirty work for him by opposing the continued existence of the coalition government in Rome. And one of the reasons why Prime Minister Draghi's resignation has caused such concern across Europe is due to the threat it may end up posing to Western unity in the face of Russia's aggression. The main news again. Steve Bannon, Donald Trump's political strategist, has been convicted of contempt of Congress and faces up to 2 years in jail. The United Nations says a deal to restore exports of grain from Ukraine will bring relief and help stabilize global food prices. And the company that operates the Channel Tunnel says delays at French border control points created 6-hour queues on Friday outside Dover. There's more from us on Twitter at Feature Story. And that is the latest Feature Story news. Simon Marks reporting.
Captain Actual America is overweight and hopelessly in debt. And the Richie Rich comic strip introduces a new, even gayer character. As if you needed another reason to remain in your isolated and socially degenerative cocoon, this is the Onion Week in Review, Comics Edition. Sources confirmed Tuesday that the Comic Book and Sci-Fi Expo Comic-Con was once again marred by BullyCon, an increasingly popular event held in the same convention space. Now in its 5th year, BullyCon reportedly drew more than 125,000 tormentors from across the nation, all of whom were bent on beating up and torturing those attending the many comic book, television, and movie panels at Comic-Con.
When this got started, it was just a couple of friends who wanted to beat the shit out of some Joss Whedon fans, but now there are thousands of us, ruining Walking Dead panels, taunting Harry Potter nerds, and really making some video gamers' lives completely miserable. I don't necessarily need to travel to San Diego to slap a copy of Spider-Man out of some pussy's hands, but there's something really special about coming together with people who dig the same sort of cruelty you do.
Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live, kicking off the 3rd hour of the program. The phones are open if you want to join us. Drop on in here. The number is 603-283-6160. We got other things to talk about tonight. You wanted to get into Binance. We're going to do that here in just a moment. That is the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange. Apparently, they're getting into some hot water for accepting Iranian customers. And you know what? I think they should accept Iranian customers. I think people should be free to do business with anyone they want to on the face of the planet, and there's no goon squad from the federal gang or whoever it is. I have not seen the story yet, so we'll find out who is the threatening party or parties in a few moments. But we'll get into that story. If you want to join us here, 603-283-6160. First up, Sarah is on the line in New Mexico. Go ahead, Sarah.
I was told that Iraq, which shares a border with Iran, their country right next to Iran, and the Black Sea is above them. So, Iraq had turned communist. They had a communist system of government many years before. And
are you talking about before Saddam Hussein?
I do not know exactly when that happened, but that's
well, that would be an interesting thing to find out. I mean, how can you make a claim and you don't even know when you're talking about?
Well, but it was about after they turned communist, socialist, and then that's when the U.S. sanctions got imposed. And then you ask why your question is the government will not allow you to buy Bitcoin from the Iranians, right? It's the same idea. If Iran wants to help Russia launching drones and attack Ukraine. So therefore, they have to make their economy fail. And the same thing with Iraq. When they had turned socialist, they've imposed sanctions. The economy failed because
that's what happens when you impose sanctions. Is you hurt people economically.
Well, that's the whole idea. And they wanted a socialist government where they had free education up to the university level. They all have free health care, but look at them now.
There's no such thing.
And they're dying.
There's no such thing as free health care and free education. You understand that, right, Sarah?
Well, but the community pays for it for people that are in need, that is in need of it.
All right, the difference between community health care or a voluntary, charity and what you're talking about under socialism is under government health care, like they have in Canada and other countries of the world, these socialized health care systems,
they charge an arm and a leg behind the scenes, a very, very expensive cost to running these government systems because they're one-size-fits-all monopolies. There's no other, in some cases, there's no other options. That's why a lot of people from Canada come down south.
When they don't, right, you don't get care. The care goes down, the quality goes down. Right?
Yeah, well, they may just decide to deny you care anyway.
Or both.
Yeah, they may just say, oh, well, we don't really care that much if you survive, so we're just not going to give you care.
You can end up having a higher cost and not getting any service at all as a result.
Yep. Whereas if it's a voluntary charity, then we can have different charities to which those of us who believe differently can donate. So some people might want to give to the Salvation Army Hospital, and other people might want to give to the Catholics or whatever.
There's actually an organization that rates how efficiently charitable organizations spend their money.
That's right.
And I certainly would want to, spend or donate my money to a charity that spends their money very efficiently, right?
But the thing is, you ask about, or how do I know about the Iraq being communist? But I heard from the Communist Party people why they were communists. You know what I mean? So if a communist member have said that they have turned communist, and I met these people that, remember they were on the TV that broke this U.S. They were not allowed to go to Iraq. They went anyways. They told the government to screw you, and then they were on TV, and I got to meet those people at the Communist Party meetings. So when they say that Iraq had turned communist, I mean, I believe it. But
you don't know when.
Well, it was before the sanction. They started up the sanctions, so
that would have been under Saddam, presumably, right?
Saddam was a dictator.
I do not know exactly.
I mean, a dictator doesn't necessarily tell you the form of government, though. I'm still
almost guaranteed not to be a socialist.
I mean, it's probably more like crony. His buddies basically, made all, and that's my understanding of what happened in under Saddam was his buddies made all the money.
There are some election results here on the Wikipedia page about the Iraqi Communist Party, and it shows that they got less than 1% of the vote in 2005, an election there. Apparently 8% of the vote in a later election in 2005, and it looks like about 14% maybe in 2018. So they do exist, but I don't know if they've, and maybe they got elected before 2005, but it doesn't go back further.
Before sanction. I mean, he wasn't sanctioned under Saddam, and have they been sanctioned since Saddam?
The economic sanctions? I don't know.
I'm trying to understand what time period Iraq could have been communist under what she's saying. I think you got something wrong about your story, Sarah. I don't know exactly what it was, but
maybe they were telling you something that just wasn't true, or you misunderstood what it was that they were saying.
As far as I'm concerned, they were telling me the truth. Why would they impose that kind of sanctions to kill everybody in Iraq unless they did turn communist? They do this to prove that the communism is a failure, and it doesn't work by starving them, by taking out all their
and that's the problem with sanctions, and that's another problem. And thank you, Sarah, for the call. Is that it gives the people in the socialist countries the excuse to say, oh, well, the only reason we're failing is because the United States sanctions. The U.S. should not sanction anybody anywhere in the world, and then they wouldn't be able to point to that, and they will still fail because socialism always fails.
Yeah, I mean, there probably is something to be said about the real reason that the United States sanctioned Saddam Hussein. Obviously, the reason that they gave was, I think it was gassing their Kurds. But I mean, the United States has supported a lot of atrocities all over the world. Why would that, be the real reason that Saddam was sanctioned? It seems unlikely, to me anyway. There's probably some other motive. I don't know enough about the history.
I don't either.
But I don't know, but this whole communist thing doesn't make any sense to me.
The number, if you want to join us here, 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. So, Chris, you wanted to get into a story tonight. It's funny that she called about Iraq. And because we're going to be in the same neighborhood here with a story about Iran, where apparently the Binance cryptocurrency exchange, which is the world's most popular crypto exchange by volume, is under fire for dealing with people in Iran. What's going on?
Yeah, so the top crypto trader Binance, platform, I think they mean, served users in Iran despite U.S. sanctions. So that's the report coming from, stories coming from a Washington Examiner. It's a good question. I'm not sure exactly what the story is in
I'm
detail,
interested in
but
hearing the story because Binance has a U.S. operations wing. They have a separate corporation,
and they're
called Binance.us.
They're substantial in the exchange market, in the crypto exchange market. Right?
I don't think so. The U.S. one is very small by comparison to the big Binance. Binance, the global one.
That's what I mean. The global Binance is not a small exchange.
They're not based in the U.S. Is the United States saying that every company everywhere in the world isn't allowed to do business with Iran?
Pretty much.
Wow.
The world's largest cryptocurrency trader was found to have processed trades with Iranian users despite U.S. sanctions. According to a media investigation, users in Iran used Binance up until at least September of last year, meaning the sanctions the United States reinstituted in 2008 were flouted. Reuters found in speaking with traders, despite a company ban, senior employees were both aware and welcoming of the exchange's popularity in Iran, which is kind of funny because it's I don't think this was. Well, let me keep reading. This is not. It's not what it sounds like. With one commenting, "Iran boys" on an Instagram post detailing its popularity in Iran. The investigation showed.
Okay, all right. I'm interested in hearing more about this. If you want to jump in, the number is 603-283-6160. And I think this is good. Not that they've been caught for it. I think that it's good that they were doing business with people in Iran. I'll explain why.
Absolutely.
Coming up here in moments, and you can share your thoughts.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
Free Talk Live.
I told him, look, there is one place we can agree, and that is our belief that the Creator is the most sacred and clean and holy essence we know about. And he goes, yup. And I led him through a bunch of yups. Hearing, sight, yup. And then I said, and the last thing that I can think of is sacred is our sexuality. You could hear a pin drop. And he had been queer-bashing up a storm. And I simply said to him, you know, folks who think they're having an argument with their neighbor's sexuality are actually having an argument with the Creator who made us this way. And that's when he started screaming at me.
Wow.
Because you can't really be a follower of Buddha or Jesus or Moses and be a queer-basher.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
The phones are open, and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio here tonight, it's Ian.
And Chris.
And you can join us online anytime you want. Head over to freetalklive.com, and you can enjoy the features that you find there, including our social media platform. Just go to social.freetalklive.com. And that is where you can interact with other Free Talk Live listeners, as well as some of the hosts of the show. And you can do it for free. It's our system. It's our server. It's a Mastodon-based system, which means it's open source, and it is federated to the rest of the Mastodon Fediverse, as they call it, with thousands of Mastodons all across the world connected together. It's a pretty cool system, and it gets you out from underneath the big tech monopolies, or oligopoly, I guess. Head over to social.freetalklive.com. Again, that's social.freetalklive.com. As we continue here, Chris, you were just getting into a story here from, where was it? Where's the story from?
The Washington Examiner.
Thank you. Washington Examiner about Binance, one of the world's largest, if not the largest, exchange for cryptocurrencies. They're getting into hot water for apparently taking on Iranian customers as far back as 2021. They were as far as September 2021. It sounds like they may have stopped them or ostensibly have stopped them, but we'll get more information here. So go ahead.
Binance has denied allegations of non-compliance. The Treasury Department did not respond to the Washington Examiner's request for comment. Binance is the undisputed leader of the cryptocurrency trading, a $950 billion industry operating nearly 4 times more markets than the next largest FTX, according to CoinMarketCap. It processes over 10 billion in cryptocurrency trades per day. Oh my, wow, that is a huge number, and boasts 90 million registered users on its homepage. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of humorous how there's so much concentration in a technology that decentralizes us. The company is based in the U.S. The company is not based in the U.S., nor does it officially operate there, referring U.S. users to an exchange called Binance.us, which is run by the CEO of Binance. So I'm guessing of the global operation they mean?
That's weird, because I'm pretty sure the CEO of Binance.us was a separate person, unless it changed recently. I know that it used to be somebody else, but regardless, everybody knows that it's part of Binance. It's just their U.S. operation.
Right.
So maybe they're saying that, oh, because you have something in the United States, therefore we get to regulate every single business you have everywhere around the planet.
Pretty much. Yep. But although its headquarters is believed to be located in the Cayman Islands, I'm pretty sure you're going to be able to check that just by going to their website. But anyway, I mean, talk about this is what amounts to reporting these days, man.
No research,
not at all. It is still not exempt. It's like the whole story is like that too. It's kind of humorous. It is still not exempt from the secondary sanctions. Punishments for allowing services in Iran range from fines and reputation damage to being cut off from the U.S. financial system, according to lawyers who spoke with Reuters. Failing to have proper sanction compliance procedures may result in punishment from U.S. regulatory agencies. And this is the problem with U.S. dollars, right? And the government, the U.S. government, effectively dominating, the world. Russia is right when it's in regards to moving away from the U.S. dollars with its rupee.
Rupee is India, I think.
Yes, I believe you're right. But this is why Russia is right, and people should be supporting Russia in that scope, even if they don't necessarily support.
Well, I certainly don't support
Russia
in that I don't support violence and I don't support their oppression of their own people.
Right,
let alone,
absolutely.
What they're doing. But I do agree what you're saying, I think, is getting away from the dollar hegemony.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
That's good for the world.
I'm not saying it has to be Russia specifically, but just in general, the idea that countries would move away from this one currency, for international trade. When why should Russia use U.S. dollars to trade with China? What sense does that make? It's insane, right? Yeah. In December 2020, the U.S. Office of Foreign Asset Control issued a $98,830 fine against BitGo, a U.S.-based company that deals with cryptocurrency, for such an infraction. In its enforcement release, the official said BitGo failed to exercise due caution or care for its sanctions compliance obligations when it failed to prevent persons apparently located in sanctioned jurisdictions to open accounts and send digital currencies via its platform as a result of a...
Now, this must have been a sting operation, right? Because how else would they have known about it?
Of a failure to implement appropriate risk-based sanctions compliance controls. Well, here's the thing. I think what they're saying, I don't think that they lack the controls. I think what they're saying is that because, people could use a VPN to get around it, I think is where this is leading. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's what they're going.
It sounds to me like the OFAC office, which is, I'm sure, a fun bunch of bureaucrats, I bet you they had people go to BitGo, open up accounts, and use fake Iranian identification, because obviously they wouldn't have real ones, right? They would use... a manufactured Iranian passport. These are federal agents to see if they could get into the exchange. And if they got into the exchange, then, you just let an Iranian into the exchange. So now,
Are they banned from allowing Iranians in the U.S. with Iranian passport or Iranian passports from accessing it? Because I don't think they are.
Are Iranians allowed to be in the U.S.?
There's lots of Iranian refugees and things like that.
Okay.
And people who, I'm pretty sure. Or what if you're in Europe? You're an Iranian in Europe. Are they prohibited?
That's a good question.
I don't know. It seems to me like that's not the That's not what's being prohibited. It's people in Iran that are prohibited, and I don't necessarily know that it would necessarily even be specific. Like if you were a European in Iran, I think the same thing would apply. You would be restricted from accessing it. But I don't know. I don't know enough of the details, but I think that's how it works. Concern had been raised about weaknesses in Binance's compliance checks by senior employees. So they clearly are complying or trying to. It's just that their controls aren't good enough. For the this U.S. regulatory agency, I guess I don't know who's regulating them, but whoever they are, and regulators. According to Reuters, the company instituted stronger compliance checks last year in response. Binance claimed it has fully complied with the sanctions. So my guess here is they probably had some sort of blacklisting of Iranian IP addresses. Mm-hmm. That's what I suspect, and I'm suspecting that some Iranians were able to get around it by using a VPN. So that it appeared they were not in Iran. But I don't know. We'll see if it actually. Yeah, it's going where I thought it was. So it does sound like it's VPNs. We have assembled a globally recognized compliance and regulatory program that has been our core objective over the past 18 months. This industry-leading sanctions program is fully compliant with all international financial sanctions, including blocking platform access to users in Iran, North Korea, and many others. So it is people. So from the sounds of it, it's in the country. It's not specifically to Iranians per se. Because and if you think about it, that kind of makes sense, because if you're an Iranian in Europe. Mm-hmm. Why would you be blocked? I mean, you're not even in Iran anymore.
Well, couldn't you, in theory, then just send money back to Iran and your family?
Yeah, maybe, except I think the banks in Europe wouldn't be then allowed.
They wouldn't be able to send
allowed it to communicate with U.S. banks, and that thus
you could send crypto to your loved ones. You could physically go to
That's
Europe.
True.
Buy crypto
That's
online.
true. Yeah.
And then just send it to your
Well, I mean,
friends.
this just goes back to why the sanctions don't work anyway,
Yeah,
right?
there's more
Like
coming up here.
they've got
The
so many
number-
holes in them, it's ineffective.
You can join us at 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. Steve Bannon, Donald Trump's political strategist, has been convicted of contempt of Congress at a criminal trial in Washington. Jury deliberations took less than 3 hours, and Mr. Bannon now faces the possibility of thousands of dollars in fines and up to 2 years in jail. He was prosecuted on 2 counts of refusing to cooperate with the House Select Committee that's investigating last year's riot on Capitol Hill by Donald Trump's supporters. With the details, NBC News Radio's Pete Williams.
One for refusing to testify before the January 6th committee, and a second count for refusing to provide documents to the January 6th committee. The statute here is not very often used. It's been more than half a century since anybody was ever ordered to go to serve any time in jail for contempt of Congress.
And Mr. Bannon will be sentenced on October the 21st. The United Nations says a deal to restore exports of grain from Ukraine will bring relief and help stabilize global food prices. The agreement was signed in Turkey between Russia and Ukraine on Friday. From FSN's bureau at UN headquarters in New York, Sarah Walton reports.
At the signing ceremony in Istanbul, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said the deal to restart shipments of grain from Ukraine will bring relief for the most vulnerable people on the edge of famine. It took 3 months of negotiations, facilitated by the UN and Turkish officials, for Moscow and Kiev to agree to the deal that will see Ukrainian captains navigate ships from 3 Black Sea ports to Turkey, where they'll be unloaded and the grain shipped on. Vessels returning to Ukraine will then be inspected by a joint team of Turkish, UN, Ukrainian and Russian officials to confirm they're not carrying weapons. The operation's expected to begin in the coming weeks, shipping 5 million tonnes of grain a month. Sarah Walton, New York.
We've had an update today on President Joe Biden's health. The White House says he is responding well to treatment for COVID-19 and has again been working while in isolation in the White House residence. He had a slightly elevated temperature last night, but his vital signs are now said to be normal and he continues to be treated with the antiviral Paxlovid. The company that operates the Channel Tunnel says it's rejecting a French explanation for delays that paralysed the British port of Dover at the start of a big travel weekend. Eurotunnel says delays at French border control points created 6-hour queues outside Dover. Lisa Minot is travel editor for The Sun.
Just as the airports seem to be finally getting a grip and calming down and people are being able to get away happily through airports, 900,000 are going to be heading off from UK airports this weekend. Now we have this critical incident at Dover where they've got huge queues.
And Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, battling Rishi Sunak to become the next UK Prime Minister, is demanding that French authorities limit any further disruption. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live, and the phones are open here. If you want to join the show, the number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. By the way, if you heard us talking last night about... Was it last night or Wednesday? Last couple nights.
We talked about the court hearing, the ridiculous court hearing that Bonnie and I attended this week, where a judge kicked the public, the attendees, the audience, if you will, out of the courtroom entirely. A packed courtroom. She had it almost completely cleared of people. Bonnie and I stayed because we're part of the press, and we just stayed where we were, and then luckily the judge didn't, try anything with us. But so we got video of this
they know better
thing. They kicked this whole courtroom full of people out, and it was ostensibly due to CO2 levels. There was a little alarm that had gone off to alert people that there was too much CO2 in the room, even though this many people had been in that room, or more than this many people, because the previous hearing was standing room only. And in this case, there might have been a couple seats in which somebody who was standing could go sit down. So it wasn't standing room only, quote unquote. It was close. So we've had more than this number of people in this room before, but there's been no alarm. But this time there was an alarm that went off. And the judge was so concerned for the well-being of the people in the court over a CO2 issue, while she was wearing a mask the entire time, which means she's constantly recirculating CO2 into her own system. But regardless, it was an insane day to be in court, and it was all caught on video. You can see that now. The story is up over at freekeen.com. The video is on the Freekeen Odyssey channel, which you can visit over at video.freekeen.com. It's a 2.5 hour long video. Most of it is pretty dull courtroom stuff, but there's some real gems in there, so you'll have to kind of jump around and you'll find the crazy parts. It gets crazy once the judge starts kicking people out of the room, and then you want to watch it from there because it's pretty interesting. So check that out at freekeen.com. Chris, what you said this story is pretty much wrapped up about Binance. Is there anything else we need to know about the sanctions?
There's a little bit more to it, but almost wrapped up. Let me finish the last paragraph here. But we have also implemented advanced detection tools that allowed us to further crack down on users in sanctioned regions that had access to I love this choice of words, sophisticated masking tools, including VPNs.
So
a VPN is a sophisticated masking tool, is what the implication of this is.
By the way, you can get Penguin VPN by going to thinkpenguin.com. You run that company.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Just click on networking, and at the very top link, there's a VPN. There's a couple of VPN options for you.
Nice.
A Binance spokesperson wrote in an email to Gizmodo, the Iranian government has used cryptocurrency and Bitcoin mining in order to avoid Western sanctions, even licensing Bitcoin miners for this purpose.
Is this what Gizmodo's saying, or who's saying that?
Let's see. I think no. I don't. That's a good question. I'm not sure. It's not totally clear. It says email to Gizmodo. That was a quote, and then the next paragraph, I guess, is just the author saying it.
Okay.
The Iranian government has used cryptocurrency and Bitcoin mining in order to avoid Western sanctions, even licensing Bitcoin miners for this purpose, according to. Oh no, it's apparently it was Elliptic. I don't know who they are, but what's interesting about this is that so. How is this really any different than any other country, doing effectively the same thing? I'm sure, like the U.S. licenses, companies too for like crypto exchanges. Like, how is it different other than the U.S. has no restrictions, whereas, Ukraine, you have to get a license to do the mining, right? It's not the government that's doing it. It's them licensing it so that others are allowed to mine the crypto. It just seems to be very interestingly the claim that they're doing it to avoid restrictions when it's not the government doing it. It's individials, and they're being licensed.
Well, it may be in Iran that may be the government doing it.
No. It's what they're talking about is, I know what they're referencing. They're referencing literally a license because it has to do, I think, with like managing electricity is the reason for the license, or
you're saying in Iran there's a license to mine Bitcoin?
Yeah, and okay. I think it had something to do you can double check me on this one if you do your own research here, but I believe it had something to do with electricity, and I think is it very cheap there? I forget. It might be very cheap there, but
are you sure you're not confusing them with Venezuela?
No.
Where in Venezuela it's subsidized electricity, and so the government will go after you if you are mining Bitcoin.
I don't think that's the case. I think there might be subsidized in Iran.
It might be subsidized
as well.
too. Yeah, I don't know.
I think a lot of Middle East countries it's that way. And they've got cheap oil basically. So, but I guess there is a licensure, but at the same time, I think their electric grid might not be able to handle it or something like that. So like they do some sort of licensing thing, whereas they say, okay, you can use it, but like maybe there are certain restrictions on it or something. Anyway,
I wish I knew more about Iran. It's like it's one of those mystery boxes where you just don't know what's going on there because there's so much that you can't easily visit a place like that because of all the sanctions, and you can't do business with the people there because of the sanctions. It's probably not as closed off as, say, North Korea, but it is one of those places. It's very mysterious.
Yeah, it's interesting. Iran was actually one of the most open countries as far as internet access up until I don't know, a decade ago.
Really, what happened?
The population got on the internet basically. So it used to be
they cracked down.
But it used to be there weren't that many people on the internet in Iran. But as a result, the internet ended up being very open, and there weren't really any censorship or anything like that going on the internet now. But then the population started getting online, and a good percentage of the population, and then they started cracking down, and it ended up becoming a country that wasn't that different from China in terms of its lockdown. And China, for those who don't know, is extraordinarily locked down. Like every little thing is censored, and even where it's not, its service is degraded to try to ensure that people will visit or use local websites as opposed to foreign websites. So anyway, and there's even there's systems to like replace like certain popular websites, like maybe I don't know, like maybe what the Washington Post or something like that. You might be able to access the Washington Post's website, but at least at one point, they were intercepting the traffic and replacing articles or links to stories on the webpage itself. Well, I think they were mostly removing the stories so you wouldn't see content that was like against
So they were
China's
middlemaning the domain name service, basically?
I think this was prior to more sites using SSL or encryption. But they were definitely doing it then. I don't know if they're able to intercept or not. It's possible they could be doing some sort of manning in the middle still with SSL2, but I haven't heard of that. Now, I know there was it Azerbaijan? I know there was some country that did attempt to force you basically had to install a SSL certificate from the government so that the government could man in the middle basically any encrypted website that you accessed. So there was at least one country that had attempted to do that. I don't know. They backed off and then they tried again, and I don't know if that man in the middle attack is still being done or if it went away, because again, it did go away once before and then they tried to bring it back because it basically doesn't work that well.
So I think one of the important takeaways as far as why people should be able to do business with people in Iran is, and in any country where there's sanctions for that matter, is because we want to have, I think, good relations with the people. Sanctions hurt individuals. Sanctions hurt businesses. They hurt the little guy. They don't hurt the governments of these countries. If you want them to like the United States, then do business with them. Make them reliant on our products and services, and us vice versa. Let's, have relationships with these people to build good human relationships to one another, and then there's less likely to be hatred between both groups.
Yeah, the propaganda doesn't work when there are lots of interactions between two different countries.
Because then you can just call your friend and ask what the truth is. Or what they saw, or whatever.
You want to open up the line of communication, not break it down.
Speaking of China, since you brought up China, there's a crazy story about them rolling tanks out to defend the banks in China. I'll tell you what happened coming up here in moments.
Hey, you are going to love the movie Victimless Crime Spree. It's hilarious, heartwarming, and carries a ton of inspiring freedom messages. Feeling down about the lack of liberty in your life? You need to put on this film with some friends and have a good laugh. It's a true story about me and my friends in New Hampshire living free, singing, dancing, and getting arrested. Of course, it's all on video, and the bad guys, the cops, judges, bailiffs, and sheriffs, they all play their part like it's out of a movie or something. You would think we scripted the whole thing, but it's real life. Go ahead and have a watch, and if it's been a while, have another look. I guarantee you'll notice things now that you didn't notice before. And the best part is that you're going to walk away feeling a renewed sense of your own power. You are the master of your destiny, and you will be free in your lifetime. Victimless Crime Spree.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically 2 types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and you can join us here. Bring up whatever you want to discuss. The number is 603-283-6160. Phones are open, of course. That's what we do here on Free Talk Live. With you tonight, it's Ian.
And Chris.
Don't forget, you can join us online. Just go to freetalklive.com. And I want to thank Troy Schultz, who is a Free Talk Live supporter of our AMPS program. Troy is contributing at least $5 a month over at amps.freetalklive.com. You can join him there and help us advertise, market, promote, and support Free Talk Live. So if you like what we do, please head over to amps.freetalklive.com and join our Patreon there with your debit card, credit card, or your PayPal account. And we definitely appreciate your help, and you get some cool perks if you do that. That's amps.freetalklive.com. So the tanks were back in the streets. They may still be in the streets in China. A lot of people are hearkening back to Tiananmen Square. It's being called Tiananmen Square 2.0. As according to firstpost.com, China is deploying tanks to prevent people from a run on the banks. As per reports, tanks have been rolled out to protect China's banks and prevent locals from reaching them. This comes in the wake of an announcement by the Henan branch of the Bank of China that the savings of depositors in their branch are now considered, quote-unquote, investment products and can no longer be withdrawn. So imagine.
Wait, what?
Yeah, imagine you've put money into your bank account, into your savings account, expecting that it's going to be there for a rainy day. You know, if you need the savings, you need to tap into it for some reason, you can go into the bank and you can just, withdraw whatever amount you want to. Nope, not in China now. You can't do that because, well, now it's an investment product. The Henan province, for the last several weeks, has been witnessing clashes between police and bank depositors, with the bank depositors saying they've been prevented from withdrawing their savings from banks since as far back as April this year. It's been a grim reminder of the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre, where armored tanks were seen deployed in the streets of China amidst large-scale protests by people demanding the release of their savings frozen by banks, in this case, not Tiananmen. Fresh videos have surfaced online in which Chinese People's Liberation Army tanks can be seen deployed on the streets to scare protesters. Large-scale protests are being held in the province by bank depositors over the release of their frozen funds. So just keep this in mind for anything you have in the banking system in the United States. Don't think this can't happen here. You know, you may be able to go to the bank right now, flash an ID, and withdraw funds, but there's no reason why they can't pull the same kind of shenanigans.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's just it's a matter of decisions as to how they respond effectively, and when things get out of control, this is how governments respond. It's not just China either.
That's right.
There's a lot of other governments have done the same exact thing when they've effectively lost control. And it doesn't matter if we're talking, I'm trying to think of the other country here that's done something similar recently.
Argentina, 20 years
India.
ago.
No, near India, the economy collapsed because of they banned fertilizer in the country. It's right off of India. I can't think of the name of the country, but it's like, I don't know, it's got like 30-something million people, I believe.
Okay.
But basically their economy has collapsed and they don't have enough US dollars basically. And
Sri Lanka. You think of Sri Lanka? Where they had the huge protests and they literally set the prime minister's house on fire.
Yep, that's it.
One.
That's it. That's
and
it.
then he quit the office.
Yep.
I
They
wonder
fled
what
the country.
updates are on that. I wonder what happened after that. We heard about them going to the president's
They're
house.
starving to death. They're literally starving to death. They have massive restrictions. You have to get they're doing QR codes in order to get any kind of gas. Whatever the little bit of gas they have, they're heavily restricting. And there's some sort of QR code system now. I haven't read I don't even think I read the whole story, but it's crazy there. But this is what happens, and it's probably going to be many months before they have any kind of resolution to that situation. But in the meantime, everything is like frozen, just because they're the government's basically. I mean, I don't want to say it's. I mean, the government. No, actually, fair to say. I think it is fair to say the government collapsed.
Definitely. I mean, if you've got the reason the prime minister and the president, both of whom's mansions or whatever, were being raided by thousands of protesters in Sri Lanka, the reason they resigned was because they didn't want the government to collapse. They made public statements like, in order to keep the government operating, we are going to leave our offices. And then they, left the country or whatever at that point. So
that's kind of funny to say the government hasn't collapsed. I mean, I guess if there's still
probably somebody new in those positions.
And new in those positions, I guess the government hasn't collapsed, but the economy sure has. Even if the government, hasn't.
So some of the other things we've seen, of course, in recent decades with bank shenanigans, central bank freezes, and things like that. You've got different countries, whether it be Zimbabwe, of course, doing insane things to its currency.
Russia's doing it too now.
Are they freezing out people, their depositors?
Yeah, I'm trying to think what they're doing exactly. But yes, they're doing something of that nature anyway.
Some places like Venezuela were limiting the amount of bank withdrawals people could make, so you still quote unquote could access your account, but you might not be able to pull out more than $40 a day or something like that, or whatever the equivalent of that was in that country.
It's interesting. They a lot of these countries do it a little bit differently. From one country to the next about how they're implementing it. I think Greece they did the cash withdrawal limit thing or something per day.
ATMs, yeah.
But I think they also just stole money. I think in Greece, if I recall,
what they call a haircut.
Yeah.
Oh, we're just going to give every account a haircut. That way, it sounds like it's not that bad. But the definition of a haircut is where they take 20% or 30% or 50%, whatever arbitrary number they say. All right. Well, now everybody's accounts are down by that amount, and the government takes it.
Yeah, and
That's
of course, that then benefits people who didn't have their money in a bank,
That's true.
or they had it in assets as opposed to a bank account.
Correct.
So it's really hurting. That type of attack effectively hurts the little guy rather than the big guy who may have.
Right. Except for the little guys that didn't have a bank account, right? Because they didn't get touched at all. The unbanked actually were completely immune to that.
Sure, that may be true, but it probably still hurt them more than it hurt the big guys who have more diversification in their assets as well as assets overseas.
Sure, and of course they're still printing money like it's going out of style or whatever, so that still hurts everybody that has. So the important, one of the important takeaways from this situation is anything you put in a bank is at risk.
Yeah,
a lot of people think banks are safe because they've been lied to, and the government's told you, oh well, we'll insure that. Well, you can't trust these people, and if they want to come after you personally, they certainly will. We've seen that. I mean, that's easy. They just send a letter and the bank freezes your account. But what if they actually, one of these disasters happens on a nationwide basis, and banks in the United States start freezing assets across the board?
This is why there's so many good reasons to have I sound like an investment advisor or something.
You're not.
I'm not, definitely not. But a diversification of your portfolio, right?
At the bare minimum, people should consider looking at cryptocurrency. And things like gold or silver at the bare minimum, if not have a little bit of real estate or whatever other.
And it's funny because it's like people. It sounds like when I say that it's like well that's only a portfolio is only for the big players, but not really.
It doesn't have to be
most
crazy.
Americans have they have things like mortgages and houses.
Yeah,
they have
need
things.
A manager.
They have things like a little bit some stock. They have things they do. Most people do have a little bit of a portfolio. Certainly most of the middle class. So it's not like this outrage, this out there type of thing. When I say this is why you diversify your assets.
A little more about China. So after a protest in Hainan's capital, Zhengzhou, turned violent, authorities say they'll start releasing money in batches to depositors who've had their funds frozen by several rural banks, with the first due on the 15th of July. So not sure how that went. Only a handful of depositors have received the payments. This is a newer story, I thought. That's weird. The story itself was published on July 21st, but it's referencing the 15th of July. Only a handful of depositors have received those payments, posing a serious question.
It takes time for news to get out of China to escape its firewall.
On whether the banks have anything to spare. As per a notice issued by the Hainan Provincial Financial Supervision Bureau, some bank depositors in villages and towns were supposed to get their deposits back on the 15th. However, non-mainstream media believe only a few handfuls of depositors have made these payments. Chinese state media has also not posted anything about the repayment. So it's just crazy. I mean, literally putting tanks in the streets, and there are videos of this. This isn't like, speculation. There's actual video, multiple videos of army tanks trying to stop people from making a literal run on the banks. Over 1,000 depositors had gathered outside the Zhengzhou branch of the country's central bank in earlier July on the 10th to launch their largest protest yet, and hundreds more have staged several demonstrations in the city, which is the capital, but their demands are being ignored by the Chinese authorities. And that's all you can do when the bank has your money is beg. And that's all you can do.
Here's the thing. What are you going to do when it's the government? It's like, think about it. What if the United States government did this? What can you do?
You can prepare for it now.
Exactly.
By getting your value out of the dollar and putting it in something you have control over.
You can't wait until it happens. You gotta do it ahead of the collapse.
You probably have to have some money in the dollar to pay bills or whatever. Sure. But there are ways to do that with cryptocurrency.
You can still divide it up into different asset classes, so it makes it much more difficult for the government to come and steal it all.
See you tomorrow. freetalklive.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world?